Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Today we're going to be talking all about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and joining me for this conversation we have Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
Merry December.
Merry December indeed. And Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on? So yes, today, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, we are recording it. This episode's going up a day later than it normally would because Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny came out on Friday, December 1st, which would normally be our Friday episode day. And it was like, well, let's do that one before we dive into our normal flurry of holiday episodes over the next couple weeks. And also this
It's
helps.
a little festive. Right?
Yeah.
It's a little...
No, I mean it's what was like June
Yeah, it was in the middle of
69.
summer.
I think it's June.
Yeah, no real holidays around this one.
4th of July, I guess.
Yeah, July. Yeah, I don't remember. I know 1969. I don't remember the exact moon landing.
It's like June. Yeah, it's late June, I think.
Yeah. When Moon Day was. But yes, this also allows us the opportunity to wrap up our series of Indiana Jones movies of that D Plus shows from earlier in the year. So yeah, let's dive into this one. We've also done Cameron and I did a spoiler cast, and I think we had Logan on at some point after the fact on that Nerdy Site show and talked about his thoughts on it as well. So there's a couple other videos out there or podcasts out there with our thoughts on it, but we'll do all of the normal that D Plus show rigmarole stuff here. So starting with our history lesson. This was originally released June 30th, 2023. Other releases at the time, I pulled this directly from... What did I pull this from? Haunted Mansion. I think I pulled this list exactly from our Haunted Mansion list a couple months ago. So we had earlier in the summer, May 26th was The Little Mermaid live action. We had Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, June 2nd. Transformers Rise of the Beasts, June 9th. Elemental, The Flash, and Asteroid City, that interesting little trio on June 16th. Yeah. No Hard Feelings, June 23rd. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny here, June 30th. Followed a couple weeks later by Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, July 12th. Barbie and Oppenheimer, or Barbenheimer, on July 21st. Haunted Mansion, July 28th. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, August 2nd. I
still want to watch that. Yeah.
Blue Beetle, August 18th. And Gran Turismo, August 25th.
I want to watch that too.
So as we've done, I think a couple times this year, because we would have done it with Elemental and also with the Haunted Mansion episode. We're here in 2023, where the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny brought in $174.5 million domestically, which is significantly down from the $317.1 million of Crystal Skull, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, a good number of years back. So where do you guys think that one falls in our rankings here in 2023?
Ooh, it's bad.
I think it's a trick. I think it's because
I'll say this. A lot of movies did bad this year.
That's
so
true.
how
Yeah,
bad
that's
did
like
this
the
do
thing.
compared to all of those? Is
yeah,
really
that's the thing is that this year's a lot of Barbenheimer, and then it's everything else disappointing basically.
And
that's why it's kind of a weird one.
This one's also very overblown in its disappointment in the news cycles and stuff because it was also a $300 million movie.
Yeah.
Right.
So
but
it still definitely lost
yeah.
money. But how did it do in the grand scheme of 2023 movies?
Yeah,
because pulling this back up, it's it did better than Blue Beetle. It probably did better than Gran Turismo. It would have done better than, I think, Mutant Mayhem, Haunted Mansion. I think Mission Impossible would have done better than it. No Hard Feelings did better than because it's an R-rated movie. Asteroid City is a Wes Anderson film. I didn't even know that Transformers Rise of the Beast came out this year. Honestly, it feels like that was 5 years ago somehow. So it's that's a lot of movies that could be better than it that weren't, and we haven't gotten to the fall winter window yet to those kind of movies that might do better than it, although there's not a lot. So I would say I'm gonna say this is domestic.
Yeah, domestic. I'll
think-
I'll give you a tease here, especially on that like fall winter line that you just said. If according to my calculations, domestically, only 3 movies that came out after it did better than it.
Okay.
Everything else is like
yeah.
from earlier in the year.
I'm going to go ahead and say... Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say 6.
I'm going to say 9th.
Okay. One of those that did a little bit less, Elemental, was in there at number 15.
So yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, like that's a movie that could have done better but didn't.
Yeah, Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, number 13. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, number 12. Number 11, Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny.
Damn.
Only $2 million or $4 million better than $2 million better than Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible did 172. $4 million ahead of Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny. Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, with 178 million.
Good for her.
So that's one of those that came out after the fact. Number 9, Sound of Freedom, that like surprise hit from earlier in the year.
How much did that do?
184 million. So $10 million more than Indiana Jones. That had a lot of like faith-based audiences going to see that one.
Right, but still, still.
John Wick Chapter 4 was number 8.
Yeah, okay.
187 million. Ant-Man and the
Trevor
Wasp: Quantumania.
Oh, geez. Yeah, no, I forgot how many movies actually came out this year.
all the Marvel ones from earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, 214 million, number 7.
That's crazy.
Little Mermaid there,
that
298 and number 6. Then we get into Oppenheimer, number 5 with 325 million. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, 359
Jeez, that came out this year, yeah.
million. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, 381 million at number 3.
God.
Number 2, Super Mario Brothers movie, 574 million.
That movie's great. It's a ton of fun.
And then Barbie, 636 million.
There it is.
So yeah, number 11 domestically here, just outside the top 10, thanks to Taylor Swift. And then, so sitting there with a worldwide gross of only 384 million, which is down from the 790.7 million that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull did.
Probably one of the worst 1-2 punches that we might have ever gone over. It's a dive.
Yeah. I mean, it came out 15 years after Crystal Skull, and it was like, who's the audience for this at this point? Compared to who goes and sees movies in theaters and stuff at this point. So yeah, with 384 million, where do you guys think this one falls? And now with kind of the added little perspective of the domestic top 10 there.
So like over half is domestic, right? Or just about. So it's not going to get like a big international pop.
Yeah.
But it's also like they're weird movies that are
there's a lot of movies
ahead of it and behind it.
Yeah, if I remember correctly from other films that we've talked about that came out this year, there's some hidden out there in like the international market that I think popped up.
I could see Transformers doing better international.
Absolutely,
obviously.
yeah. Especially if it got to China, it's definitely going to do way better.
Was Fast 10 this year?
Fast 10 was this year, yeah.
Yeah, Fast 10.
Yeah.
So that's gonna pop high up on the not high.
Domestically, Fast 10 was number 16.
Yeah.
Just
but it's gonna bounce up
international.
Hard, if I recall correctly. I think it's actually going to end up being. I don't think it changes. I think it stays number 9.
It was number 11.
Sorry, number. What did I say? Oh, you Logan said 9. That's right. I was like, who said 9 then? Logan, I think it stays. I think it actually stays at, or not stays. I think it goes up to 10. There we go.
I think it's going to be 13th. I think it's going to go down.
That's fair.
All right. 13th is Meg 2: The Trench.
Oh my God.
Just above 14th, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Oh dang! Wow, it dropped.
Meg 2 did better. Well, that's the one that hurts the most.
Yeah. Meg 2: The Trench did 395 million compared to the 384 million of Indiana Jones.
That hurts.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is about $100 million ahead of number 15, which is Five Nights at Freddy's.
Wow, 100 million difference. Wow.
Yeah. It's very Five Nights at Freddy's is just like been out only a couple weeks though, I think, or a few weeks.
Sure.
And so it's kind of like, is it going to continue to climb or did it really have its flurry and is done?
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, Transformers: Rise of the Beasts did go up to number 12 with that worldwide gross. John Wick Chapter 4 is number 11. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania dropped down to number 10. Elemental jumped up quite a few spots, up to number 9
Good for them.
Internationally. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning up to number 8 internationally. Little Mermaid at 7. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse dropped down to number 6. Fast X is the big jump, moving all the way up to number 5. So
that's like an
10 spots.
It's so massive internationally, though. Yeah. It's so massive.
$704.7 million, which is like $559 million. That is foreign box office. So 79% is foreign gross on that one. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 comes in at number 4. Then we get up to Oppenheimer all the way up to number 3, $950 million. Then we get into our $1 billion club for the year, the Super Mario Brothers movie, and Barbie at number 2 and number 1, respectively. Barbie, top in the list here, $1.441 billion. About 80 million ahead of Super Mario Brothers, 1.36.
So. That's closer than I would have expected it to be.
They both hit very different audiences. So Mario hit obviously a very kid-friendly audience, and Barbie hit the Barbenheimer crowd. It did better domestically, but then dropped down to number 14 worldwide. Our runtime here, 2 hours and 34 minutes. In the Indiana Jones timeline of things, obviously, it is the last of the Indiana Jones things, but we had Raiders of the Lost Ark back in 1981, Temple of Doom 1984, Last Crusade 1989, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, a whopping 19 years later there in 2008, and then another 15 years go by before we get Dial of Destiny here in 2023. Our roll call. For the first time, our director is not Steven Spielberg. We instead are directed by James Mangold here, who had previously done stuff like Girl Interrupted, Kate and Leopold, Walk the Line, 310 to Yuma, and then The Wolverine and Logan. And then after Logan, he did Ford versus Ferrari, or Ford v Ferrari, rather. And then he did Dial of Destiny here. And he is currently slated in IMDb land. I don't know if this is one of those projects that will inevitably be canceled, but
it'll never happen.
Star Wars: Dawn of the Jedi
literally will never happen.
Potentially out there. Our writers here. We have a writing team of Jez Butterworth and John Henry Butterworth. They both worked together on Edge of Tomorrow. And Ford v Ferrari before doing Dial of Destiny here. Jez Butterworth had also worked on a couple other projects like Black Mass. And for you, Logan, Spectre.
Yeah. Well, we won't hold that against him.
But I did see that and I was like, I'm going to pull that one in for Logan. And then David Koepp, the only kind of carryover who'd written previously, because he did Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but he also goes all the way back to stuff like Death Becomes Her, and Jurassic Park, as well as Carlito's Way, the original Mission Impossible. He did Lost World, Panic Room. He wrote on the 2000 Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's first one. Then War of the Worlds, 2005, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Angels and Demons, the 2017 Mummy, and then here, Dial of Destiny. And James Mangold also has a written by credit on this. In addition to Girl Interrupted, Kate and Leopold, Walk the Line, and Logan, he had also wrote the animation screenplay for Oliver and Company, Disney thing from the 80s, featuring Billy Joel. So that was I saw that pop up, I was like, that's a weird credit for him to have. Our cast of characters, of course, Harrison Ford back once again as Indy, having been in American Graffiti, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Blade Runner, Patriot Games, The Fugitive, Clear and Present Danger, Air Force One, and so many other things. New to the crowd, Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helena, probably best known to audiences for her work in Fleabag. But she was also the robot L337 in Solo, A Star Wars Story.
One of the best parts of that movie.
Lando's droid, and then here she is in Dial of Destiny. Antonio Banderas, which is one of those that's like, oh that's right. He's in this movie as Ronaldo. Of course, been in stuff like Desperado, Mask of Zorro, the Shrek / Puss in Boots series, Pain and Glory, which he was nominated for an Academy Award a couple years ago. He was in Uncharted, and here he is in Dial of Destiny. He was in the Uncharted movie, rather. We were talking a lot about Uncharted and Last of Us before we started recording, so it's just a coincidence. Karen Allen in here as Marion, having been in National Lampoon's Animal House, Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Glass Menagerie, Scrooged, The Sandlot, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. John Rhys Davies returns as Salah, with credits all going back to 1964, including Raiders of the Lost Ark, Victor, Victoria, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the Lord of the Rings films, and now Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Another new to the crowd. Actually, I think everyone else here is new to the party. Shawnette Renee Wilson as the CIA agent Mason has been in Billions. She was in Black Panther, the first one, as one of the Dora Milaje in Oakland. In like the the 90s specifically. That was what she was credited as. And then here she is in Dial of Destiny. Thomas Kretschmann as Colonel Weber. Has been in Blade 2, Resident Evil Apocalypse, King Kong, Wanted. He was in the MCU in Captain America: Winter Soldier and Avengers: Age of Ultron as Baron von Strucker. And then here he is in Dial of Destiny, and he was also in Gran Turismo later this summer. Toby Jones as Basil Shaw. Any guesses as to who he was in the Harry Potter series?
Oh, he was in the Harry Potter series.
In Harry Potter, yeah. I pulled this in because I was like, I didn't realize that was him in Harry Potter, but it's him in Harry Potter.
Is he a professor or not? That's the best.
He's not a professor.
Question.
No.
He's not a professor. So,
Ministry of Magic person probably is my would guess. Some rando from there. He's no one from Hogsmeade. He's not Ollivander.
Shot in the Dark. Is he the executioner for Buckbeak?
No, that would be hilarious.
I just went through like all the movies. I'm like, who's somebody whose face like we wouldn't have seen, but maybe like voice or silhouette or something.
Final question, Trevor.
Yeah.
Is he in more than one movie?
Yes.
Oh. That almost makes it harder, actually. Okay.
You're like, he's in more than one movie. Why don't I remember him? I'll just give it to you if you guys don't have it.
Is he
Dobby's voice?
He's Dobby's voice, yes.
There we go.
You both landed on it at the same time, so I love that.
It's like, great. I'm like, who? He's been in multiple ones. Yeah. It's like, I'm like, Last Shot in the Dark.
Really?
Yep.
Dobby.
Yeah, he's Dobby's voice.
That's crazy. His voice is so different than Dobby's. That's interesting.
Yep.
I really enjoyed him in the Captain America films. I agree. As well as like he's been in quite a few other things. But I've just been every time he pops up, I'm like, he makes his, it's interesting. He makes his short stature kind of speak volumes with his movement. Whether it's in that scene with, like whenever he is walking around Red Skull, in the Captain America film, there's always something like major, he does big movements, I guess is the best way to put it. Like everything he does is big movements, even when he's being like submissive.
Is he in the Infamous game, or is it a movie called Infamous?
I think it's a movie called Infamous. I'm trying to find.
I'm trying to make sure.
That's what I'm trying to look at. Because I'm like, why did I put?
Doing?
Yeah, why did I put Infamous in here? Oh, I think that's just like that was one of his like, it was an infamous movie in 2006.
Okay. This guy's in Infamous, Harry Potter, and Doctor Who. I don't know who is in any of them. It's like
so that was that's the movie he played Truman Capote in.
There you go.
So it was like that. It was one of those like him. He did one, and then I think Philip Seymour Hoffman did one where like both of them were just Truman Capote one year. He was also in the Hunger Games franchise, which I do have that in here. Obviously we also talked about him as Captain Zola. He was the Dream Lord in Doctor Who.
Thank you.
That iconic episode with Matt Smith's Doctor.
That's right before the 50th anniversary, right?
It is.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The real end of the episode is like the reveal of John Hurt's War Doctor.
It is.
Perfect,
that's such a like iconic episode.
Shout out to knowing that, but not knowing that he's Dobby's voice. Like remember that episode so clearly.
Yeah. He's also Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
That's a great movie.
Boyd Holbrook in here as Klaber or Klaber, basically henchman number 1. He's been in The Host, Narcos. He was also in Logan. He's in the 2018 Predator, in The Shadow of the Moon, and then recently he was in The Sandman on Netflix and Dial of Destiny here. Olivier Richters as Hauk, big, heavy henchman number 2. Has also been in Black Widow, where he was Ursa, the like prisoner that like goes up against what's his butt from Stranger Things, and gets his
David
like
Hopper.
arm broken basically. He's also in The Kingsman and Dial of Destiny. He's also in the If It Ever Happens movie Borderlands, which we haven't seen anything from in like 2 years. But yeah, he's going to be in that. Ethan Isidore as Teddy Kumar. Here he's in Dial of Destiny. After this, he was in The Walking Dead. Daryl Dixon, whatever that is. I guess that's the Daryl spinoff. I guess.
I think so. This reminds me, and it's allowed because it's related to The Walking Dead. I was like going through. I platinumed
Battle at Bikini
Bottom.
Yeah,
came when you were gone for this, and instead we decided to go back and look through all my stuff, and it reminded me of like, dude, how good was the first season of The Walking Dead from Telltale? That first season's so good.
Never finished it.
Did you not?
No.
Oh, that you should go.
I've tried it. I tried it a couple times. Hey, I don't care about the zombie stuff. And yeah, I never got like I've gotten. I think I got all the way up to like the start of episode 4 on like my third attempt, and then I was just like, it's too slow for me. I don't care about the source material in the way that I like a lot of other Telltale things because I like the source material better. And yeah, despite everybody singing his praises and stuff, and I think it's one of those things I probably am just less inclined because I know how it's going to end, and I know, I know the tragedy that's coming. That was a surprise for so many other people.
Yeah, I get it.
But yeah, it's just never grab me.
I didn't know that about you. I like part 1 precisely for the reasons you don't. I like the fact that it's just like slow, just like hanging out with these characters for a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not to the point where like it'll get in the later seasons where you're really just kind of bumming around and not doing much, but like it's like the perfect balance. And
it's also, I mean, it's the things I don't like about zombie things of like I remember, chapter 2, you have to like cut off a kid's leg or something like that. I'm like, I don't want that.
Probably.
That's not a thing I'm interested in like actively participating in, and and like the whole thing with Duck, I'm like, that's just going to be a sad story. I don't really want to experience that. So yeah.
The second episode's got the cannibals at the farmhouse too, I think. I know. Yeah, that's the second episode.
Yeah, I got through them. Yeah, I think that's episode 3.
I finished the first season. I tried to do the second season, just couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
I think they drop very quickly.
Anyway, lastly here we have Mads Mikkelsen, and this is in credit order. So I was like, wow, like a whole bunch of people got credited ahead of Mads Mikkelsen on this one.
That's pretty wild.
Mads Mikkelsen here as Mads Mikkelsen, as I saw recently, of like, here's a bunch of people who always get their names pronounced wrong. But here's Dr. Voller.
What is it?
Mads.
Wait. It's Maz. It's Maz.
It's Mads Mikkelsen.
Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah, basically the D's silent kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
The D is supposed to signify that you pronounce the S differently.
Yeah. But yeah.
Okay, like an umlaut kind of thing.
Throw him all the way back into Casino Royale.
Hell yeah.
As probably one of his big like breakout roles.
For sure.
Then he did Hannibal. Which got him a lot of like TV acclaim.
Very good in that too.
Obviously, he was the bad guy in the first Doctor Strange film.
Oh, that's right.
Bad guy in Rogue One. Bad guy in Death Stranding.
He wasn't the bad guy.
I mean, yeah. Sorry, I get like
he's the dad.
Yeah. Sorry, but yes, no, he's not Ben Mendelsohn. But he's he works in the Empire. He's forced into the Empire.
Yeah.
But yes, he's not a bad guy in Rogue One. He's in Another Round, which got him a lot of like awards buzz a couple years back. I think that was
really
like
good.
early pandemic stuff. He took over as the third person to play Grindelwald in
3 movies.
Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. And here he is in Dial of Destiny. Diving into trivia with all of our other Indiana Jones ones, the website alloutabubblegum.com
letting us down.
Was able to give us a body count, but sadly, given the recency of this one / the lack of wide spread availability and or the lack of people still writing for alloutabubblegum.com, maybe there is no no body count for me to pull for this one, but it was a lot. Like I knew I didn't have a body count, so I was kind of like looking at it and kind of like keeping like an ongoing tally.
Sure,
and like
doing the math in
the train sequence at the beginning, a whole bunch of people get blown up, obviously, with the bomb, but then also like the big barrage of gun just like mowing down all of the Nazis on the train. Lots of people die in this one. But yes, I do not have specific numbers to give you. So other trivia we have: John Rhys Davies had expressed interest in reprising his role as Sala. He was offered a cameo in the wedding scene in Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but he, quote, thought the character Salah is worth more to the audience than that, end quote. I think we may have talked about that one in our Crystal Skull one.
It'd have been cool. It'd have been cool if he was there. I still stand by that.
Yeah. It's one of those that, like, much like just the timing of things, like, this one would have been served so well if we'd gotten Ke Huy Quan in here as like short round somewhere along the way.
Right,
but obviously he was kind of like, when this one was being made, he hadn't really like risen to prominence.
There's your backdoor pilot, right? If they had had him, they had just backdoor piloted that, and now it's the Adventures of Short Round going forward. And we might still get that. Who knows if we're lucky?
Sure. In an interview with on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Harrison Ford explained how the film majors digitally de-aged him for the flashback sequence. Quote, "They have this artificial intelligence program that can go through every foot of film that Lucasfilm owns, because I did a bunch of movies for them. They have all this footage, including film that wasn't printed, so they can mine it from where the light is coming from the expression. I don't know how they do it, but that's my actual face. Then I put little dots on my face and I say the words and they make it. It's fantastic." End quote. At 80, he is the oldest actor to be de-aged in a movie, surpassing Al Pacino, who was 79 when he was de-aged in The Irishman. And I'd forgotten that I pulled this trivia, and I was actively thinking when we were watching it today, you think they got Harrison Ford to put dots on his face?
Or did they did.
Or did, it sounds like they did. Because I was definitely watching like, I bet he was like, I'm not putting dots on my face. And animators just had to work that much harder to like line things up. But
no, I mean,
apparently he did.
I think if it was just like, you don't have to get into like the old costume, but here you go.
Right. Oh yeah. Like, he wouldn't have done that, I think, but yeah.
If it was just like, hey, come in. Oh, do I need to put on outfit? No, you just put these dots on your face. Okay, go ahead and read the lines. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sure he'd be fine with that.
I do think it's important to note, since I don't really know a better time to do it than now, Harrison Ford looks very good for 80.
When he has his shirt off, it's like, God damn, forgot he was I'm never 80. Gonna look. I don't look that good at 34, much less that good at 80. Holy shit!
Like, I mean, he looks like an 80-year-old to me.
He looks.
Like, I don't think he does. No, I don't. I think he looks like he's like 65.
Okay,
70.
let me put it this way: the fact that his skin is not like doesn't look like it's being slowly melted off of his frame means he looks fantastic for 80.
Right.
Like,
I think he looks better here than Al Pacino does in The Irishman.
Oh,
absolutely.
The two contemporaries.
By far,
yeah.
But we're also talking about like 4 years of tech development over that. Wait, no, The Irishman came out when?
2019.
But you're also talking about like his real body, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Just in general, I think Harrison Ford, because they're basically the same age. Harrison Ford, I think, looks better than Al Pacino does.
Harrison Ford is fit for 80.
Yeah.
Granted, I mean, he does have the 80-year-old, like, I don't have very much skin elasticity left, so here's the box that is my torso.
I mean, we'll talk about it certainly like when we dive into the movie. For me, like the CG is fine. It's whatever it is.
The CG I don't think it's amazing.
It's one of those things, like, I think everybody gives like de-aging stuff a much harder time. And they're like, sure, there is a little bit of like video game kind of like quality and uncanny valley to it a little bit, but for me it's much more the fact that it's an 80-year-old voice coming out of a 50-year-old or 40-year-old indie kind of thing.
I think that's what breaks the immersion for
that's
me.
what and they've done, especially Disney did with like when they would bring Luke into the Star Wars TV show stuff with Mandalorian and whatnot. Like they did a mix of using voice AI and de-aging kind of thing to play with like Mark Hamill's voice in that. So I was surprised that they didn't do that and kind of like try and de-age Harrison Ford's voice a little bit more in this, as opposed to just him sounding crusty and 80 the whole movie.
What it reminds me of is when Connery came back to do the From Russia with Love video game, right? And but then he was similar, like 75, 80 years old in 2005, and he did that, and he was even younger because Sean Connery in From Russia with Love is like 33 years old. So he was like really younger than Ford is in this moment even. And it's just like, oh, that is not Sean Connery. I mean, it is Sean Connery's voice, but it is not that Sean Connery's voice. That is a much, much, much older Connery voice.
Thing that could have explained it a little bit, just as kind of like a way of just basically like walk around it, would be if like a Nazi punched him in the neck, like when they were taking off the hood.
Sure.
He's got a permanent frog in his throat the rest of the movie.
Sure. Yeah, they could have played with that.
Could have played with that. There's ways you could have played with that, but also you could have just changed his voice, like Trevor said. The technology existed. Yeah, you just could have done it.
Just weird stuff.
Or just had
change the pitch in
like
post.
Segment,
it's not
right?
like it's not an impossibility. That's even older. Like older.
Just dub him for that, even if you need to, right? Like fine.
Other trivia: Steven Spielberg saw and gave the movie his blessing at CinemaCon by saying, quote, "I just had that experience 2 nights ago. Bob Iger had a screening for a lot of Disney executives, and I came to the screening along with director James Mangold. Everybody loved the movie. It's really, really a good Indiana Jones film. I'm really proud of what Jim has done with it." End quote. He added, quote, "When the lights came up, I just turned to the group and said, 'Damn, I thought I was the only one who knew how to make one of these.'" End quote. This is, of course, the only Indiana Jones film not directed by Steven Spielberg, but Steven Spielberg did stay on as an executive producer, so...
Steven Spielberg giving that quote while guns pointed at his head behind the curtain.
Yeah, I was going to say, no surprise that he's really trying to talk it up, because he still makes money off of it if it makes money. So.
Absolutely.
Also, he loves Indiana Jones, right? He's still like,
Sure, yeah. And I think as we will discuss, this is far from the worst Indiana Jones movie.
That's true. That's true. That's a great point, yeah.
It's by far not the worst, yeah.
Yeah, I would say objectively not the worst Indiana Jones movie, in fact.
And then pulling this big old chunk here, because I know Cameron likes to bring it up, so we'll just knock it out of the way here in trivia. In November 2022, the entertainment magazine Empire reported that antagonist Jürgen Voller is a former and possibly current Nazi modeled on real-life rocket scientist and ex-Nazi Wernher von Braun.
That's right.
Co-screenwriter Jez Butterworth explained, quote, "The simple fact is the moon landing program was run by a bunch of ex-Nazis. How ex they are is in question. Wernher von Braun was the best known of about 1,600 Nazi scientists and other technicians who were brought to the U.S. after World War II in a secret intelligence program called Operation Paperclip. The director of the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, von Braun led the project to develop the Saturn V rocket that ultimately enabled Apollo mission to reach the moon. His American fame was partly due to a Disney TV show that showcased him as a hero of the space race. For his death in the mid-70s, his membership in the Nazi Party had usually been explained away as political expedients, but in more recent years, his Nazi involvement has come under much closer scrutiny. As with the Saturn V, he'd been the main architect of the Nazi military rocket program and was instrumental in designing the V-2 rockets that killed thousands of Allied civilians. Moreover, those rockets were manufactured in a brutal underground slave labor camp. Dora Mittelbau, also known as Mittelbau Dora Nordhausen, or Nordhausen, was overseen by von Braun. So yes, he's very much like, here's our like real life analog, and we're just gonna make Mads Mikkelsen Wernher von Braun.
He's a Nazi.
Yep. When he said, "I'm a professor from the University of Alabama," and I was like, in Huntsville.
Yep.
That was my fault. It's just like, yes, I know exactly who this is supposed to be. It's so very
also,
much the case. And I love that we're like recognizing the fact that like the CIA like is just covering up some shady shit. It's like, yep, like especially with like if you take any time to read about the CIA from really any point in time in history.
Shout out to Henry Kissinger, right? Who's
very active. Shout out. I said, Trevor, good news. Henry Kissinger's dead.
Yeah.
After I had already seen 4 tweets that you'd requoted about the news, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I 100% played the TikTok of him like his death announcement going over with the dancing crab meme going on.
Yeah, you got to.
But like watch that a bunch. Shout out to Henry Kissinger, who's rotting in hell.
Yep. It's a dry heat though, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's a whole thing. Like we see, it's like somebody who's quote unquote not like, he's like, I'm not an agent, whatever. It's like, I'm like, you just could have been, because I like, especially because he's Southern. It's like, if you do your history and you learn about like where Nazis were detained, they were detained in the South, and they got along really well with Southerners in the Jim Crow South.
I was going to make the same point, so you came taking the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, like it's like
very interesting that the Nazis were in Huntsville, Alabama, I'll say.
Yep. I wonder why they felt so comfortable and at home in Huntsville, Alabama. There's a whole lot of things where it's like, these are really smart touches to it that I just love about this movie. That they touch, they're like, hey, here's like a political like thumbtack just right like for this movie. And I think that's probably what like raises my enjoyment of it a lot. But
well, that's all I had for the trivia. So, what did everybody think of this one? Cameron, I'll throw to you first.
Sure.
So you can kind of continue expounding on those little things that you enjoyed.
Yep. I don't think that this is I'll put it this way. This movie is a movie that I enjoy. It's not one that I'm like, I ever feel thrilled by, like Raiders or Last Crusade. I like, especially on the like kind of like rewatching of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and kind of like my raised opinions about that in like the years after. I have to say that like there's a lot about this that I enjoy. I think there's a few things, especially about the plot and everything, that I'm a bit nitpicky about. The mark and the forced deck aspect of the dial. Like there's a lot of like small things that are like, I just feel I'd be like overly it's contrived plot, but like overly contrived at certain points. And it kind of just like spoils a lot of earlier fun moments. Like a lot of things were like, we're going to go ahead and explain why this thing wasn't really this way. And I'm like, yeah, but it was funner the other way. It's funner that the Nazis fuck up. And it wasn't just always going to end up being this way. It's funner that,
I mean, they still fuck up.
They do still fuck up, but
because they don't realize it was always going to be that way.
Yeah, there's that aspect of it. But I just love the idea that it's like this super smart guy, like forgot that, like there's like the Earth shifts over 2,000 years, and I like that aspect of it a little bit more. But like I said, nitpicky. These are very small nitpicky things.
It's interesting because I remember like when we talked about this in the spoiler cast, I think we were even on other sides of it, in that like, you had an understanding of like, oh no, it wasn't that they were always going to go back there. It's just that this happened to. And I was like, I had heard that line of like, you were always going to go there. And I like on this rewatch, I'm thinking, oh no, I think she's just identifying that this is a Bootstrap paradox. Like because we've already seen that he had the watch, like they were always going to end up there. But I don't think, I think another use of the Archimedes dial could have taken them to a different time.
Sure, but to be okay, I see.
So that's my read of it this time around, and maybe that's also because there was a whole bunch of Bootstrap paradox is very much at the forefront of my mind from Loki season 2. But
there you go, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
But yeah, I think like I think it's just her calling out. I think there is a read where you can just say it's her calling out the fact that like he already has the watch that he took off the body. Like, of course we were coming back here.
Yeah.
Like we've already seen in our past that we were here effectively.
You know what? Never mind. Take that nitpick away. I like that explanation of it. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Just like little things. I think, and I'll boil it down to this. I think like this is on paper a great Indiana Jones movie. I think on paper, I think there's a lot about this that makes it a classic Indiana Jones like a story. Where I think it falls apart is Harrison Ford's really old, like really fucking old, and
he's doing his best.
He's doing great for 80. He's doing amazing.
Doing great.
I will be dead before 80. Let's be real. Like,
Yeah.
like I would dream to aspire to be at Harrison Ford's like shape and activeness at 80.
Yeah.
So not dogging him at all about this. Like he's great.
Yeah.
But like the reality is that this isn't like there's a lot of things that are a lot of chases and a lot of action pieces that are a lot of vehicles or Indy kind of being sidelined a little bit. Which isn't necessarily always a bad thing, but like it's just there's a lot of like
a lot of he rides a horse through a subway.
No, that's awesome. I've heard people say that was bad, and I will contend that will always be awesome.
I think it's bad because of how fake that aspect of it looks. Like if that had been, if this was Harrison Ford in his prime kind of thing, and like they had done that in some kind of more practical sense, I think it would have been a great sequence and a great like set piece stunt. But it is an old guy riding a horse very slowly when he's like around the crowds of things, and then very fast when it's CG and he's just on a green screen kind of track.
Sure. I just like the concept and the idea of the entire horse, motorcycle, motorcade, parade chase sequence through the subway. Like I like that. I think like I said, I think on paper I love this movie a lot more than I like it in like actual in actual play. Like, I think if this had been 20 years ago, if we'd gotten this movie instead of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and we had like that, like even that much of a younger Harrison Ford, I think these things like popping off the way they do, I think would have been a lot more fun. And I just think it's just kind of like, it's the timing of this film coming out when it is, with like Harrison Ford's age, and like, there's some characters that I like the first time around we watched it in theaters that I was not too hot about Teddy this time around. Maybe I was just like really hopped up on having a kid short, like another sidekick again.
Because it came out like around the time we did our run of Indy episodes in the lead up to Dial of Destiny coming out. So
I was
you were just off of the excitement of Short Round, and you're like, it's another Short Round, yay!
Pretty much, and he's not.
No,
like he like I said.
I mean, that's clearly what they're evoking, but he's not.
I think on paper, Teddy as a character is good, but I think it's just like I'm kind of like in the inverse. I don't think he's old enough for some of these like bigger moments to actually, I think, be realistic and hit for me.
I like Teddy still. We'll get to that.
Cool. That's fair. I think overall, I think on paper, like a really good Indiana Jones idea and film in its execution, some smaller parts, but these are all it's a death by 1,000 cuts. But it's not death. It's just being cut by a dozen cuts for me. So clearly not my favorite, but also by far, like we said earlier, not the worst by far.
Logan, how about you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot in that I agree with, right? It's a weird movie. I think that's like the big one for me, right? Like Dial of Destiny is such a weird, funky movie that sort of the pieces don't click together, but there are chunks that I enjoy. Sort of piggybacking off something Cameron just said, I think this movie, it's very No Time to Die to me, right? In the sense of like they knew what they wanted to get to at the end, and so they had to kind of go through these slightly convoluted loops to get there. And the ideas ahead that weren't part of that were more interesting, right? Like I like all the stuff they explored that weren't how they got to the end and what the ending actually was, more than where they actually went, right? And the same with like I like a lot of what No Time to Die was doing, and then they went this other direction because it had to get to this ending, right? And it sort of dragged the movie down a little bit and it slowed it down a little bit. I think that happens here a lot because they're so focused on trying to get to this one particular place with Indy. I think that it is a movie that largely succeeds because of Harrison Ford. And we talked about this back in June and July, whatever. I'll say it again here. I think this is a great Harrison Ford performance. Like I think he really is just sort of given it his all. and giving it like everything it has in a way that he maybe didn't in Crystal Skull. And I think there's also like a recognition on his part that he is not going to do this again. This is going to be the last one. And I think he kind of gave a lot of that into it. It's easily the most like melancholic and sorrowful and sad and tragic Indy performance. And while I don't know if I love to see Indy like that, I love what Harrison Ford did with that material, and kind of to see him wrestle with something like that, I think is really interesting. And him and Marion in this movie is great. I talked a lot in the summer. I'm sure we'll talk again now about I don't like a lot of what they did with fracturing that from the unit and the way that they did it. I have pretty significant issues with it, in fact, but it led to really great interplay between Indy and Marion in this movie, I think, and the ending in particular is really beautiful. And again, they sort of had to do this to get there. I don't necessarily think it was needed, but it's lovely what they do with it. My biggest issue, and I said this in the summer, or maybe not my biggest issue, that makes it seem like I hate it, but a significant issue for me that it was in the summer and it's here again now is that I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge is just not. I don't like Helena in this movie. I didn't like her in the summer. I don't like her again here. It just doesn't work. Like I think the words I think I already described it in the summer. I kind of like, and I'm gonna use again, which is that like she just feels like she's a character from another movie, and not even a movie that I dislike. Just not this movie, right? She's sort of the opposite of she knows exactly what kind of movie she is in. Like she doesn't know what kind of movie she's in. That's the issue, right? And I think so much of her scenes with Harrison Ford to me just don't work because they are just kind of on different wavelengths. I think like they're different characters, different films, and different stories. And this is partly why I like Teddy more than her, because I feel like Teddy, while not as good as Short Round, still is sort of in that same like young kid sidekick role, and that's that archetype, right? That he's sort of fulfilling. And I think there's like a tiny aspect of like Helena as an idea is really interesting, of like this person who is basically Chloe from Uncharted, right? Like in terms of like she can kind of slink back and forth between being a good guy and being a bad guy, quote unquote, right? But the issue is that I feel like they just don't commit to that fully enough, and they don't commit to one way or the other enough, and there's like the tragic backstory stuff thrown in there. And yeah, she just doesn't work, and it brings down so much of the movie because they put so much of it on her as it goes on. And in particular, she has a very key role at the end to bring, spoiler, Indy back. And so, yeah, it makes like this weird thing where like, I like her when she's just being a good guy, right? But they vastly between that so much where like you literally don't know until pretty late into the movie what she is. That she just doesn't work for me, I think. But there's also like elements of that sort of pervade the whole cast, right? Like the Nazis are exactly who Indiana Jones villains should be, and yet here they're sort of weird. Like they don't really work as villains, and part of that is that like there's not a lot of interplay between Indy and like the main villains of this movie. Like he doesn't actually spend that much time with them.
There was a moment when they're flying into the past where like Indy says like you're German, Volder, like don't try and be funny. And then he also like calls him like Jurgen, you messed up. I'm like, were you around at any point where he's introduced his real name? Like,
right.
He was introduced to you as Schmidt. Like, when and obviously it's like, oh, there was plenty of time where they were together then off screen, kind of in the, in getting onto the plane, stuff like that you can write that off. But it was very much like you guys haven't interacted a lot. You've been foils throughout, but yeah,
right. And I think you look at like what I think certainly all of us would agree are the best Indiana movies, which are Last Crusade and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and like they have really great villains, right? And like Belloc and kind of the trifecta happening in the Last Crusade, and I think that's missing here, right? There is sort of a villain being villainous to other people and Indy doing Indy things to other people and like not much interplay, which is a shame because I feel like these guys would have had a lot of fun if they'd had more of a Belloc and Indy role or whatever the like female Nazi is in Last Crusade. I can't remember her name right now. And
Elsa. You would have liked them to make out. Elsa. Yeah, I agree.
Dude, don't even get me started, right? And so like I think there's like so much more fun to be had, right? And I think Indy gets his best moments when he gets to kind of play off a great villainous like persona that just doesn't happen, which is kind of a shame. And so yeah, it becomes this weird thing. And like the Antonio Banderas moment is like, oh cool, and it's like, oh, he was just here for like 2 minutes. That was weird. Like why? Like there's just like a lot of like odd choices littered throughout that I'm like, oh okay, this is a cool idea, but you didn't really commit to it. And now I'm just sort of like, why was this here? But it's also again, to be clear, not the worst. Like there's so much also here that is really fun, I think, and in particular on the dramatic side, I think it does really, really well.
Yeah, that's where I was going to jump off. Is a lot of my thoughts on this do remain kind of unchanged from where we were over the summer, and the absolute highlights of the film end up very much being the conversation that Indy has with Helena on the boat of like, I would go back and tell my son not to enlist.
Sure.
That's still my favorite part of the movie.
I still teared up watching it this time. And then the Marion stuff at the end also teared up, and it was like those are the moments, especially that one on the boat. That is a flavor of Indy we've never gotten before.
Nope.
Like we've never gotten like set, like the closest we got was, Crystal Skull. We lost Marcus and then we lost Dad, and he's like a little bit of like somber reminiscent on that. Like this is, I lost my son, and and it was because of rebellion, and things didn't end well between us. So I'm dealing with that. That then spiraled into Marion, being in a bad place. I couldn't help that. And so like, yeah, it's like it is very much, I think we joked about it then too, like it is almost the same kind of Han Solo arc that he had in Force Awakens, in terms of like his son has, fallen to the bad side or died, and
in this case,
it has led to a schism in his family and all that stuff. And yeah, but it's very much a side of Harrison Ford I haven't seen. And it is a beautiful dramatic acting moment in a way. Like I've talked about this a few times, especially when we did like our summer of Star Wars, where it's like Harrison Ford as Han Solo is a great character, but he's also like, he's not playing over the whole spectrum of emotions and range. And then like, whatever you will about Solo, a Star Wars story, Alden Ehrenreich comes in and has a lot of different beats to play in that. And I remember like walking out of Solo being like, I think I've seen more sides of Han Solo in this one film than I'd seen Harrison Ford do over his 4. And this is kind of like a same or similar kind of feel of like, we talked a lot in King of the Crystal Skull about how like removed from the frustrations and talk of 2008, like Shia LaBeouf brings some really good performances in King of the Crystal Skull.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
And like the emotion and sadness that he is when Ox is, when he sees how broken Ox has become and stuff like that. It's like, oh, there's some nuance and depth to this performance. And we get to see Harrison Ford kind of bring that to Indiana Jones for the first time, really, in this, and in a just a very beautiful way that then obviously also gets to dovetail nicely with the callback to all the way back to Raiders at the end, and that beautiful scene with Marion, while also still having a fun little like humorous bit of him like realizing that he covered her face with the magnet earlier, and so he slides that away.
That got you again. That was so funny.
It got you more, but did. Yes, it got us both this time.
Yeah,
we both popped for it. Yeah. So I agree. This is a great Harrison Ford performance as Indy, and a better one than we've got in at least a couple of the Indy films. And I think, again, like, this is going to go above Crystal Skull for me in terms of thematically. I think this is a much better final adventure for Indy than aliens or extra dimensional beings or something like that. I think the fact that this one is constantly centered around the theme of time and relevancy in an ever-changing world, and yeah, what is Indy's place in this world? Would he be better off living in the past, trying to, like, quite literally living in the past, which, you know, he's dreamed about as an archaeologist and all that stuff? I think that confrontation that the movie poses, even if he doesn't get to make the agency of making the choice to come back, he's very much acting from a place of grief and loss in his desired decision to stay, and
blood loss,
and sure, and very real blood loss, and, you know, who knows how well his faculties are running at that point. He's also 80.
He's old as hell. He's lost a lot of blood, and he's literally in his dream.
Yeah,
like every archaeologist starts with the question, "What would it have been like to live there?"
Yeah,
right.
So I like that is the adventure he goes on, and I remember, like, you know, a big talking point was always going to be like, oh my God, have they jumped the shark because they did time travel? It's like, the first movie out, spirits came out and killed a bunch of Nazis and melted faces and stuff. There's always been a magical element of like science fiction.
The movie immediately before this, there were aliens, right? Like that. Exactly, if you want to say when they jumped the shark, like that's like, you can leave the first one out of it. The movie before this, there were aliens,
and not even like, oh, they came from outer space, like quantum physics UFOs related, like stuff. Like, they went deep in the Duffy on sci-fi. We can do time travel. It's okay.
Yeah. So I like this as a final adventure for Indy thematically. I think it fits. I mean, especially I thought about that a lot in, like, when you compare and contrast, like, his professor moments in this one of, like, teaching a very bored class that is like the least interested in anything he's ever talking about, compared to, you know, him being a rock star in, you know, the first couple movies, and even in he escapes the university in the fourth movie because people are trying to get his attention so much. So, like, he's retiring. He's at all these points where he doesn't feel like there's necessarily a place for him in the world anymore. So I like that he's grappling with that in a thing where the MacGuffin is all about time. And then I agree very much with you, Logan, in that, like, while I like Mads Mikkelsen and, like, the Voller character, I think it does suffer from the fact that he's so much of a he does that thing that I always kind of like rag on Sephiroth in Final Fantasy VII, of, like, he's a much more threatening presence to the audience, more so than the characters. He only pops up to the characters a couple of times. Like, we have a whole thing in Tangier where, like, yeah, he's one part of the chase, but much more like he is the thing that they are chasing, but the thing that is chasing them in Tangier is Helena's ex, and that whole thing, and that whole, like, random subplot.
Weird, unnecessary, yeah.
So yeah, I do think this movie kind of suffers from a lack of chemistry between those, but we do get great moments with Mads Mikkelsen, you know, talking to the waiter in the hotel while the parade's going on, and just being full blown Nazi of, like, I'm going to be very racist to you, black man. Where are your people from? Yep. And also, yeah, you fought in the war, but how'd that work for you? The war that ended 25 years ago that I'm still bearing a grudge about. How's your victory? You know, how are you enjoying your victory? It's a great, like, oh yeah, he's a bad guy. He's a Nazi that wants to kill Hitler so he can be a better Nazi than Hitler was.
Yep.
Which is a fascinating and, like, I mean, there's a great like fascinating ego to that, and so I love that like moment right before they go to the past where he is confronted with oh, what if I did fuck this up? What if I did get everything wrong? Let's abort. We need to abort. We need to stop this at all costs. So I love, once again, hubris kind of being the comeuppance there. And so, yeah, he's great. But then there are like, this is a 2.5-hour movie. I think we go to like a couple steps too many in the journey, including, I don't think we needed any of the dive stuff. I think we could have like found a way to compress that. Same with kind of the, I think you could have found Archimedes' grave in a different place or something like that to, not also do the ear of Dionysus, whatever. Like there are just a couple extra action set piece things that feel like they're in there as filler. And I know like it's not one of the things I pulled in for trivia, but I remember the writers of this movie basically being like, yeah, we get to throw everything at the wall because who's going to say no to an Indiana Jones movie? It's like, well, if you go back to historically, like Steven Spielberg in the Indiana Jones movies, they did cut stuff out because it was going to cost too much. And Disney just
that was a
gave
much
up on that.
Budget too,
So like, and one of the things we talked about in the trivia for Temple of Doom was, they cut a whole page of like the flight into the like raft kind of landing or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they cut a whole page of that because it was going to save them millions of dollars. So like one page of dialogue to save millions of dollars. Yeah, they should have done that a few more times in this film.
I think you pick one or the other, you don't get both.
Yeah.
I think that's the kicker for me, is that we don't need both. And I would have kept the ear of Dionysus personally. I like both set pieces. Like if you take them by themselves, I like them a lot, but I think there's a lot better back and forth with Helena and Indy, and we get like that whole like, she's like, why are you like, oh, you're climbing so slow, and he's like, I've been like voodooed, and like there's a lot of great moments. You also get the moment with Teddy like outwitting, like showing that like finesse is better than brawn against the big, like Teddy getting a kill on the big guy who's like just been massacring everybody with just by lifting them.
Who's just been like punching the crap out of Indy from off screen a bunch. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like shout out to that way, by the way. Like just I was caught off guard. I forgot that Indy gets hit in that moment because it just comes from off camera and he just gets smacked like backhanded hard. Yeah, no, I don't remember him punching anybody. I just remember him grabbing people and just breaking them or like putting them into something and then they crumple and break.
And that also speaks to another one of my gripes with the villains of this is they are wildly inconsistent with their villainy. The henchmen in particular, who sometimes are just killing without regard, and then and then when the plot dictates it, they don't shoot. They just killed 2 completely random people that they found in this university, but they find their target talking to another person. They don't just kill that other person, aka Indy, because Indy has the plot armor.
I thought it was because they were waiting for Indy to have to see if he had the dial.
No, they do plenty of like. They have their gun out and they've shown no reason to not kill people before, or that like they'll kill people they kill indiscriminately when the movie wants to show them as bad guys, which then makes them look dumber and more inept when they don't do that for the people that like they actually should be shooting at and killing. And so it's just like that's one of my biggest gripes with them is
sure
they're just they're not written consistently throughout the film. The big brawny guy is one of those cases of like, he is there to be big and brawny, and sometimes he just punches something, and then other times he's just shooting something, and it's like, well, why? Like, or I mean, like even on the boat, that is another one where it's like they show up and immediately cut the line of the random 4th diver that's with them. They slice the body of the guy who's like teaching Teddy how to, do whatever on the boat. Like they kill indiscriminately up there, and they kill like randomly up there because they don't know who's at the end of that line. It just happens to be that our 2 heroes and Antonio Banderas are the other 3 on the line. They bring them up. They don't immediately kill Antonio Banderas.
I thought that's why they sliced the dude, is because they were trying to figure out which one was the line they should cut.
I mean, like, if that's the logic of that,
it's pretty inconsistent.
But like,
it's
I mean,
flimsy.
but
it's
even
flimsy.
that, like, why would they still keep Antonio Banderas' character alive, apart from the fact that it's Antonio Banderas? So let's give him one more scene,
right? Like, even Teddy,
yeah,
they don't just like
exactly.
And that's like the big one for me, that you like, oh well, just
multiple times, they just keep him around.
Why?
They've shown like no reason at all to keep him alive. The
only excuse I
they
could
kill
give
the
him
guy
if he was
at the Ear of Dionysus, who's like we see his body later when Helena goes and steals his car,
motorcycle.
Does she steal a motorcycle from him?
Yeah, she steals a motorcycle from him.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. But there's some.
No, I don't think
definitely some like, okay, yeah, you kill randomly and indiscriminately sometimes.
Sure.
Like, I mean, even some of their other henchmen, like, they get out of the Con Edison guy, they back into that cab. Like, they don't show it, but that cab driver's dead. So it's weird. Weird villain writing for the sake of villain writing kind of stuff. But I think this does that, like, we're going to go on a globe-trotting adventure, and we go to like just a couple too many places that we didn't need to go to, and could have made it a tighter experience.
One of the things, though, on that note, that I think this is even we're talking about things that are misunderstood about series, but one of the things that I think is kind of missed about Indiana Jones is that for all of the attention paid to them being globe-trotting adventures, they don't actually spend that much time at other places, right? Like, I mean, the second movie, is basically all in one spot, but like even the first and the third ones are not actually going to that many places. Like the third is definitely the one that goes the most places, and even there, it's probably like 3 or 4, and that's about it, right? Mm-hmm. And here it feels like they're doing a lot, and part of that might be like the flashback. It's like that counts like a place too. They're going, but like they're bouncing around a lot. They split up the like, planes of action in a way that they don't usually do in other Indiana Jones movies too, right? And so that helps fragment it more, right? Because you're getting like all the Voller stuff plus all the Indy stuff, and so it just feels like you're traveling and bouncing around a lot in a way that in Last Crusade and Raiders of the Lost Ark, you're very much not. It's much more like a beat by beat by beat journey, and it's not actually that much destinations you're going to ultimately.
Yeah, I think you saying that, I think there is like a war of escalation across the series, much like the immediately thing that popped to mind as kind of you were talking about, that is like you go from the trench run at the end of A New Hope to a couple planes of action at the end of Empire Strikes Back to 3 planes of action at the end of Return of the Jedi to a billion during the prequels and stuff. And so it's that kind of like, okay, well, we did 1, let's do 2, and so I think with that original trilogy, it starts out simpler, and then as they became more big budget spectacle kind of adventure films, it was okay. Yeah, let's take them from this point to this point, and then and that will get them to where they need to go, or something like that. And we've just added a few more, especially with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and now this. Because like even that another element of that I do think the movie kind of like hand waves away a little too much is the fact that the villains also just automatically show up at the same places that our heroes do without having some of those key clues and stuff.
Yeah.
In particular, like the Voller, like they're going west instead of east.
Yeah. Oh
okay.
My God.
Well, there's a lot of stuff west. And somehow you decide to land on the Cave of Dionysus.
It's not the cave.
Sicily?
It's not the Ear of Dionysus that they come up with. It's that they're going to Sicily.
I mean, but
even that,
there's a billion things that they could going west.
He only was in 2 places, like Sicily and Alexandria. Those were the 2 places Archimedes is from, like is known for living in. It's not dumb. It's there, right in front of you. I'm sorry you didn't see it, but it was there. It's not dumb. It makes sense. Alexandria to the east.
I would still argue Sicily, a large enough town that the odds of them
an island, a whole island, right?
Finding Teddy.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah. That's just Indiana Jones like villain bullshit. Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah.
There's the difference to me is that like compare Voller to like Belloc, where like I think one of the clever things the movie does is that like Voller actually doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, right? Like he's not an expert in like this shit, right? Like he can't read the languages, he doesn't know any of the clues really, right? And I think it's interesting to compare that versus like Belloc, who like knows his shit, right? And like is like an equal to Indy. And so like when Belloc arrives at places, it's like, all right, cool, that makes sense, right? And like I think there's a level of care they give, like him come out of the tent looking up and like seeing guys around this hole, and they're like, oh, cool, that's probably where he's at, and like this kind of stuff. And I think they explain it more, and he's given enough credit and skills on his own to where when those leaps are made, it makes more sense. Or even Elsa, right, in Last Crusade, like she knows her shit, right? But here, that's not the case. And so when he does make those same leaps, it's like, well, but you have shown to not be an expert in this stuff and to not know what you're talking about. And so when you make that leap, it just feels like it's because we need you there for the plot, right? And that's the issue I have.
It's not a leap though, because they don't. It actually is more like Indy is doing the leaping, because Voller has the piece that would tell you where you need to go to find the tablet, and then gets the info about the tablet, sees they're going west, not east, so they're not going to Alexandria, they're going to Sicily.
I mean, there's also the like, you found them out in the ocean, I don't think he has all of those clues. I don't think they establish at least that he has all those.
No, because Indy mentions he has your dad's journals, and he has all the clues in his hands,
but he doesn't know how to decipher them or anything like that. Like
her dad's letters and stuff were like, and explaining how the dial works and everything. Like her dad literally went insane by documenting all this stuff. It's not that big of a leap of logic that he's able to read a guide of how to find the tablet, goes to where the tablet location is, and they're there. Like, it's not that big of a leap of logic at that point.
I think the ocean is large. I think Sicily is large.
That's my point too.
I think the movie very conveniently puts Voller like right on top of them too much.
Yes. I think in Sicily that makes sense, but I think in the ocean it's like they're at a coordinate that was logged in her father's journal. So if Voller finds that coordinate, he's going to go to the same exact place. Their coordinates, their fixed locations.
I just think ultimately there's way more instances of it happening in this movie than there are in, like the first and the third, right?
Yeah, but it's not like I just don't think that the idea, like I think Sicily's a great example of plot demanding Teddy randomly runs into them while he is getting gelato.
Yeah, I mean,
after pickpocketing a kid. Like, I think that's a fair criticism. But to say that every other time when there's a lead up each and every single time leading up to and explaining why Voller's doing this. Yeah, he's not the great equal to Indiana Jones in the archaeology hunt, but he has everything kind of like, you can say, well, it's plot contrivance that he has everything in his hand. Like, what's the point? Like, you can make those arguments, I guess. And I understand, but to just like be like, oh, it's all hand waving, that he just shows up there.
I think when
the film goes out of its way to literally give us scenes where it explains why he understands that he's going there.
But see, I don't think the movie does give us scenes. I think the movie gives us I think they're very throwaway things, and I don't think they're spending a lot of time on explaining it in the same level of depth they do in the other ones, is my contention.
When Indy in the same scene where or the scene right before Indy finding out about Tangier, like, oh, she's known to go to Tangier, all this stuff is collected. A file is literally given to Voller.
We're also getting bogged down in this.
That has her details about her like her past and like what the likelihood of Eddie. It's all literally always in his hands. He's always being given it. I don't think it's hand waving.
Agree to disagree.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. I think enough of it is convenience, but you do not.
I hear you, but yeah, I just don't view it the same way.
Yeah, then we get into the Archimedes-ness of it all. And like ultimately I'm still okay with like they've gone back into the past. I think it's extra funny and stupid that like that a Nazi plane from the 40s gets taken out by a bunch of Roman ships from 200 BC.
Hell yeah. The Romans know how to do it, man.
Like, hey, you know what you could have done? Just stay out of range of all those harpoons being shot up into the sky. But nope, we see a whole bunch of Nazis just get obliterated by those things.
Yeah. Pretty great.
Good aim for those Romans too.
Yeah.
And then we do get into this weird little like bootstrap paradox of we see the early unfinished version of the Archimedes dial, and we see Archimedes go out and meet his final version of it, and it was they did the thing earlier in the film where it's like Archimedes was big on water displacement. I'm like, oh, that's right. The other thing I know about Archimedes is he sat in a bathtub and water came up and he said Eureka, and then he comes out and says Eureka when he sees people in from the future. Shout out to them both being able to speak Greek to him, and it's also one of those things. I'm like, would they in 200 BC would they have had a concept of years? Like, is years a word that would be in like ancient Greek, or would that have come later? And these are just the dumb little things that ran through my head this time.
They would have known what years would have been.
Yeah, they would
have had their own word.
I mean,
years still happened. Yeah.
Like, it wasn't 214 BC to them.
Oh, that would be different. Right, yeah, that would be different.
No, for sure. Yeah, because there's no BC. For
but like,
them.
Exactly.
Just,
yeah.
I'm
coming into like
BC, yeah.
Like they mentioned like clocks didn't exist for another 1,000 years kind of thing, and so I'm like, where does the calendar at like obviously the calendar as we know it gets created 500 years later or whatever
in the before that it was just the universally adopted calendar because of colonialism.
Anyway,
I mean, like really just the Romans. I mean, the calendar we use now is basically just the Roman calendar. We just slightly tweaked it during like the Gregorian era in like the 1500s, but it's still basically the same basic calendar.
Yeah, it's still that same calendar, but calendars existed before the Roman calendar.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
okay.
Like I mean, their calendars are going back to like ancient Greek or ancient Egypt, and that's like 5,000 BC.
Sure.
Yeah. Their calendars are old.
Yeah. It's in Japan they even still have their own internal calendar system.
Yeah.
That they even break out into eras. Like
that's a great
so many years there's a new era that's created.
Yeah.
So like calendars are cool, man. History of calendars, way cooler than people
really
would give them credit to, because there's a lot of politics and a lot of history and a lot of stuff involved. It's great.
Oh sure. Yeah.
On that point though, I do just want to not on the calendar point, but on the larger point, I do want to. I could talk about calendars though, but I do want to say that
we're such fucking nerds.
I think one thing that bounces back and forth that I kind of vacillate on how much I like it or not is obviously them going back into like the actual past and like meeting Archimedes and going like actually time traveling, because I think it's something that gets more hate than it should. Like, I don't think it's that dumb. I want to be clear, and I feel like people act like it's like super like unforgivably dumb, and it's like it's not that bad. I mean, it's like we had UFOs in the last movie, guys. On the other hand, the like tiny caveat to that I will say is that I think oftentimes a lot of the best like treasure or whatever it might be that like Indy's going after is best like sort of teased at what its full power is and not necessarily shown, right? Whether that's like the Lost Ark or whether it's even like the Holy Grail, you kind of get like a glimpse of like what this is without like the full like effect of like what's actually happening here. And I think that's not the case in Crystal Skull, I think, to its detriment. And I think that's not the case here. And I think it would have been more interesting if they sort of like teased, like maybe like a character like goes into the past off screen, then like comes back and kind of thing. And then like they'd have like that. But like to go there itself, I think does sort of like diminish some of the mystique and magic around the treasure, just like it does for most things. Actually seeing it sort of, oh, that's what it is. Okay, cool. Your mind's imagination can kind of make it more magical. But it also is very important to say that a lot of the arguments about how stupid this is, I think are totally missing the point of what this whole series is. Like,
yeah.
Indiana Jones, they're fun B-movie pulp action serial adventures. And like they've never taken themselves seriously. They shouldn't.
He runs away from a boulder in the intro of the first movie.
Last movie.
Yeah, UFO's last movie. Boulders and
people's faces melted in the first movie, right? Like we had a guy drink from the wrong cup from the Holy Grail and turn into a dust skeleton in one. And there's a whole bunch in the second one. It's okay. It's all right. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, should he have gone back in time? I don't know. Who the fuck cares, right? Like, that's where I'm at. Like, who cares? It's fine. It's not the worst part of this movie.
What greater treasure is there for an archaeologist like Indiana Jones than to, with his own eyes, get to see the past as they lived it?
Yeah. If anything, it much more draws a question of like, okay, sure, I get why they never found the watch that Archimedes had, but there's also a parachute and a 1940s bomber that somebody would have dug up over the generations.
Definitely, yeah. Like, is it like goofy and dumb? For sure, but like it's fine.
If they left the plane there, but like if they took the plane as like a resource,
I think they left the plane there.
I think they would have like
the plane's in ruins.
Oh no, I think the plane's in ruins. No. I mean,
you're saying the Greeks broke it down or something.
Yeah, like the people of Sicily. The people of Sicily probably ended up like breaking it down and using it for material.
Then you get into that weird thing of like, but now they know about like an engine thousands of years before they otherwise. It's like, does that
the engines probably weren't intact because one of them got a spear through them and the other.
But like that's the counter argument someone would make is that now they have all this future tech thousands of years early, and does that just like change?
It wasn't I just don't think it was together.
We talked about
again. I don't think it matters. I don't think I'm just saying that's the argument someone would make.
I think obviously they don't go this route, but there was like an interesting element that I think they could have gone. That ties it back even to the Lance of Longinus at the beginning, where they're like, oh, that's a fake because that ally is only 50 years old. I think it would have been really cool if it was like, oh, that metal was what, was used, and it was only 50 years old, but it was because an alloy from 50 years ago or something like that.
Still show up as an
that
alloy.
has also been sitting out there for 2,000 years.
Yeah. So the alloy itself only existed for the last 50 years. If that was like specified a bit more. Yeah. And then it turns out that is the actual Lance of Longinus, and the reason it was like, and it's that would have been fun. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
What a great way to tie in that to the paradox.
Yeah. Let's make that a fun headcanon thing.
There we go.
That's exactly what happened. That ship got broken down and sent off to Rome, and they stabbed a guy named Jesus on a cross.
There you go. Well, yeah, sure, but yeah.
Sure. Anyway, any other favorite moments or least favorite moments that anybody wants to chat about before we dive into the report card?
I got to take a moment here to defend Phoebe Waller-Bridger. I love her in this movie. I love Helen as a character.
I just think she's just.
No, I love Helen as a character. I think that she's a great moral and internal foil to Indiana in a lot of ways that are fun and dynamic. I think that it is also a lot of the change of the future is is a bit doesn't care as much for history. And I think that she's had we get influences that she has had after her dad died, she kind of didn't have anybody to kind of look out for her. And so she ends up kind of doing what getting involved with some shitbag things and doing some what's a way, if you're rebelling against your father and your pseudo father figure, what is the one thing they love more than anything? Preserving history. What do? You just auction it off to the highest bidder. And there's I feel like there's a tinge of anger and rebellion to that aspect of it. I feel like also that I do feel like there's a strong turn from when she's on that boat. She has that moment with Indiana Jones, which is, once I will reiterate, is my favorite moment of this film. Mm-hmm. I think that she gets a peek behind kind of the mystique that was the legend of Indiana Jones that she grew up with. And she sees him as just a man at that moment. And I think that's kind of a beginning of her, no longer, there's only one more instance where she talks about selling something for money. And it's the ancient gold of the thing they get after they burn off the wax and wood. After that, and Indy points out, he goes, you wouldn't, like, nobody who doesn't care about, like, history or your father or anything, like, wouldn't, like, a shitbag kid wouldn't memorize 7 notebooks full of, like, notes and details.
Yeah. And plus he helps her realize, like, she kept Teddy around.
Yep.
Like, it's clearly not always about the money, because, hey, yeah, she's giving up some of her share from all that money by keeping the kid around. So,
yeah, I think that, but I just love I think that there is an aspect you're like, which is almost, she's like from a different time. And it's like, cause she is from Indiana Jones. She's a woman of the modern age, quote unquote, modern age of 1969. Like, where she grew up in an era where women weren't kept at home. And there's a lot of aspects about her being from kind of a quote unquote different world than Indiana. And I think that is part of their dichotomy of their characters and in their place in the story. And her relearning her love of history and of archaeology in this adventure is part of her growth and arc. And also her and Indiana Jones kind of like reconnecting and bringing back a relationship. There's a point in the movie where he stops calling her Wombat and starts calling her Helena. And then it gets to a point in the movie where there's a very poignant moment where all of a sudden he calls her Wombat again. And I think that is intentional. I think that's intentional. And I think it's and it's also like right before he says, "Leave me here to die."
Yeah. Because it's he's calling her Wombat when he wants to stay in the past. Yeah.
Like, but also it's like, does she take away his agency? Yeah, because he's an 80-year-old man who's lost a lot of blood and feels like he doesn't have anything left for him back in the future. And he's literally in like an archaeologist's dream. Like, it makes sense why Indy wants to stay, and it makes sense why he needs to get punched in the face and taken back home anyway.
Yeah, I like that she is a different flavor of character than what we've had in other indie things. Like, she doesn't go full villain like Elsa does in Last Crusade, but she is more antagonistic and she's nowhere near as bad as Willie Scott in terms of like that antagonism. No. And the fact that there's also like no threat of like a romantic angle here between Indy and his goddaughter certainly helps things. But yeah, I like that she has the arc of going from con woman, who even going to Indy is like treating Indy as a mark from the beginning of the movie, and very much playing on different like his different elements and stuff. She shows up in his classroom. She's the one that like gets him to spark a little bit to life in his final class, I guess.
Well, not his final. Well, it ends up being his final.
I mean, yeah, it ends up being like that's another thing. Like he's saying this is all going to be on the final, so theoretically there's still more classes to go. But
they just had his retirement.
They have his retirement party, and then he just never comes back. Yeah. So that's what
he's kind of wanted. Like,
yeah, exactly.
He's first under suspicion and need to be asked about the murders of his 2 colleagues.
Yeah,
and then when he goes on the run, they assume that he's guilty.
But yeah, so I like that she kind of goes from that, and he kind of his arc is to help her see that there's more to life than the treasure, and she and her arc is to kind of to grow in that way. Like, I love one of the other scenes I love is I love how giddy she gets at decoding the
tablet,
wax tablet thing. Yeah,
it's so good.
And
so good.
She's decoding that while coming up with the plan to dynamite and she's just kind of like, she's turning it into a show and like that's her in her element, and she's having a great time with it, and she's super giddy as they get out of there. And I love that sobering thing of like, my friend was just murdered, and like that has to bring her down, and like show the like, yeah, she didn't know him, but like Indy did, and he was a human being, and it forces her to realize that there are like stakes to this in a way that she wasn't thinking about because of the high of what she just got and what she got away with and all that stuff. And so I like that as a turning point for her, where then they go to Sicily and she, starts to, confess like, this is why Teddy's been with me. This is why I keep him around, kind of stuff. And to the point that she sneaks aboard the Nazi plane to save Indy and bring him back and stuff.
She also kills off a lot of Nazis all at once when she drops them on the Romans.
Indeed. Yep. She probably has the highest body count of the film from that.
Because I don't think we can assign a body count to the unmanned, broken, burnt out machine gun.
Other than that, it's like unnamed American bomber that takes out the Gatling gun that then kills a whole bunch of other Nazis.
He wasn't American. He was British.
Was he?
Yeah, because the flag they have above the train when they take it over is the British flag, not the American flag. Cool. I noticed it this time. I was like, wow, okay.
I didn't catch that.
But it is a U.S. bomb that's dropped on the castle that Indy's in, though.
Sure.
Because it says U.S. bomb on it.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's another moment that I did want to call out and ultimately that's, I think, what makes the boat sequence worthwhile in this movie is that it is a very big Helena character moment. And so if I had to cut the two, that's the one I would keep versus the Ear of Dionysus thing.
I think when it comes to for the adventuring part, because I'm thinking of going down to the depths and stuff. Sure. The adventuring part, I like the cave more.
Yeah. Ultimately I get why they're all in there.
Absolutely.
I just would have liked to have seen some consolidation of scenes and ideas, and let's go to a couple fewer places or spend a little bit less time in each of these places and cut 20 minutes off this movie.
You want to talk about water displacement? What if Archimedes' tomb was under the water?
Sure. But yeah, so that's another Helena beat that I like. And so I like that they're learning from each other / teaching each other over the course of the movie. I think that's a good dynamic for them to have. And a good way to give a new flavor to Indy again in this of because there are those moments where he is realizing that he wasn't there for her maybe like he should have been, and this is what has come of that. I also just as another random shout out moment, I like during the car chase in Tangiers where both Helena and Teddy keep giving him directions and he keeps going the complete opposite way. I just for whatever reason I get a kick out of that of he apparently knows the city better than they do, and or how to navigate / find what he's looking for better than they do.
I think it's the difference between they're telling him, hey, there's a road that will take you over there, and he goes, yeah, but there's stairs over here.
Sure.
And it's that to me is more of a Indiana Jones is everywhere I go is a road if I have a vehicle, versus other people being those are roads, these are sidewalks. But that was just my take on it.
Yeah. Cool. Any other moments before we dive into the report card?
No, I think
I have a couple. I'll
go for it.
I'll run through quick.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I don't like Indiana Jones in a city. I think that's something that I've realized is that
fair.
In New York. Yeah.
In New York, I just don't think it works, right? I think him in New York City.
It is also weird that he went from teaching at Ivy League schools to he spent the last 10 years at Herbert or whatever it was in Hunter in New York. It's the writers have come out and said oh yeah, we did that just so he was near the Moon Day Parade because that's the set piece we wanted to do. But yeah, it's a weird fall from grace that they don't really devote any time to.
Glad you said that, Trevor, because something else I don't like about the movie is how uncool Indiana Jones is in this movie. I strongly don't like and don't think it makes any sense how there's 3 kids in his class and everyone's bored and all this kind of shit, because Indiana Jones,
there's more than 3 kids.
But my point is the same. If we're taking everything that's happened in these movies up until now as canon, and Indiana Jones is a well-known figure, certainly within the archaeological community, that classroom is packed. Everyone's riveted to what he's saying. That doesn't change if he's 80 years old in 1969 or if it's 1937. And I think there's like an element of like James Mangold just trying to like Logan this a little bit in terms of like we got to like get them as like low as he possibly can for the story to work. But like I just think it doesn't work in that regard. I don't think it works in terms of like how Indy's received and like talked about and acknowledged by everyone else. I obviously don't. I think let me be clear because I don't want to be misquoted here. I 110% know for a fact they killed Mutt off because no one liked Mutt in Crystal Skull. And they were like, let's kill him off. We want someone to have died for Indy to have to go through this beat. We're going to kill Mutt off because no one likes him. And that's such a dumb reason to give into those dumb Indiana Jones fanboys from 2008 who didn't like Mutt. Because Shia LaBeouf is fine. He gets way too much flack for Crystal Skull.
Yeah,
I think them killing him off. I think you could have gotten a lot of that same beat from them being estranged, even not necessarily having him die and they can reconcile at the end. It could be him and Mutt instead of him and Marion. I just think it was gratuitous to kill Mutt off itself. And it goes back to this larger sense, I think, of like they are breaking and pushing him down so much in ways that I think like it's just silly that the level of which like Indy's in like a tiny apartment in New York City and no one gives a shit about him, no one knows who he is, and it's like that's just not the reality for like if we're taking this actual person and putting him in the real world, that guy's a fucking on magazine covers. It doesn't matter if he's 80 or not. Like everyone knows who he's talking about. Like it doesn't matter if like Stephen Hawking's 80. People still fucking so it's like it's dumb and silly, but they, like Trevor said, they did it because they wanted him in New York City so he could be at the parade for the moon landing. That's fine, but like that's why it's here. It doesn't necessarily make,
I will say
plot-wise sense.
Yeah, I will say about Mutt dying, I think that even if you're like, oh, they did it just I'm like, there's nothing. There's nothing compared to the loss of a child. Like nothing destroys people worse than the loss of a child.
But I think the issue is that it's so unnecessary, right? Like it's like that thing of like it's just so unnecessary for him to die, right? Like what, like why, right? Because then.
Because it justifies the moment we get on the boat with Helena.
But I don't think it does the problem, right? Like I think you can have that same moment in a million different ways, right? Like I think you can have that same moment if him and Mutt are just estranged, right? Like Mutt to Vietnam, Mutt got injured, right? Mutt got wounded, right? And we don't talk anymore. And now Marion's divorced me, or that would like there's moments can still work in the same vein. And you're gonna say the same thing again, but I think you're just wrong. Like I think it was unnecessary to kill him off and do away with that. And I think it makes Indy's future really weird and messy. And like in his like in between this and Crystal Skull, right? But like I think it makes it really like oddly messy, right? Where like now it's like him and Marion are gonna get together, but like they're 80, they don't have any kids, obviously, because Mutt's fucking hella dead in Vietnam now. And then like, Helena's essentially like a surrogate daughter, right? I think it's fair to say we'd all kind of view her by the end of this movie. And like what, like his life is still shit, right? Like he's got Marion, but like otherwise he maybe has a job as a teacher, maybe doesn't. No one knows who he is. Like it's like this weird thing, like because of like how low they put him, when they get back together, it's like great. Now he's with Marion, but like when you like pull that thread back, it's like, but like also like what happened to his life in between this? I still want to know more about. But like the answer is there is no answer because it just needed him to be here so that they could have him really low, and then they could get him to this part. And like that's like the issue is that like they like sort of like fudged up Indiana Jones a lot, where like it doesn't really work. And like a lot of this, and a lot of my critiques of this movie and Crystal Skull is that Indiana Jones had the perfect ending in Last Crusade. He literally rode off into the sunset. On the Last Crusade, right? Like that they did it. They did the thing. And so like all of these two movies that have come since, and them sort of like having to like rework the fact that like, oh right, we gave him literally like the riding off into the sunset ending, and how do we like rewind that? And like I like the ending in Crystal Skull more than I like the ending in this, right? Like, I think that ending I enjoy for Indy, right? Like, I want Indy to have a happy ending. I want him to be and a nice celebration with like his family and friends and married with Marion and having Mutt with him and having like the family life he never had with his dad, right? And they sort of, well, they don't sort of, they completely explode that in this movie, right? And I don't think it's insane for me to be like, Indy's, to the conversation we had earlier, Indy is not Joel Miller. This is not The Last of Us. I just want him to be happy. I don't think it's an insane thing to ask, right? And I think killing off his only child is like, did we really need to do that for this? Like, because to your point, like, yes, it's a nice moment with him and Helena. That is all great. And him and Marion reconcile. That's also awesome. His son is still dead, right? And like, for what, really? Like, in terms of like the overall narrative plot point. And it's just sort of like, it's just a dark beat. Like, it's like that weird thing of like, it'd be like if they killed off like Nate and Elena's like child from Uncharted 4. It's like, it led to a great moment with this other character that we just got introduced to in this movie. It's like, yeah, that might be true, but also they just killed off Nate and Elena's daughter. Like, what are you talking about? Like the real world like stakes that are like really significant. Like we don't. I don't think it's necessary.
I don't.
That would be my counter.
I don't think we need to go down like super far in this rabbit hole. But I'll just throw in my 2 cents in that I lean more on the side of Cameron in this. In that I think there's an element of it wasn't just fan backlash that got Mutt killed. It was also they like Shia LaBeouf ran his mouth and people did not want to work with him again. So they wrote him out and were going to write him out in some way or another. And I think to the way I end up leaning more towards Cam in this is I think for the time period between the two movies, going from like the space age of the early 60s, 50s. No, what 50s, like I think Vietnam and the war were enough of a like, yeah, a lot of young people went off to war and died, and that changed a lot of families and a lot of perspectives changed as a result of that. I think it's true to life that Mutt would have done that and kind of would have like the it is very much like, yeah, they wrote that scene and the scene is delivered beautifully, but
I agree with all of this.
Yeah, it's
for me is the argument that everyone has about why Sully doesn't die in Uncharted 1, 3, or 4, right? Yeah. It's just sort of like, because that's not what this story is. That's not what Uncharted is. And to me, killing Mutt off is just like, that's not what Indiana Jones is, right? Like, but it's not what we do really. Like, we don't kill these people off. I mean, like, when there are like allied deaths that happen and like for like real characters who are like actually, not to say like Antonio Banderas, but like real characters, it's because they actually die in real life, and we're like gracefully doing it that way, right? We're like with Sean Connery, the Marcus
Brody and the Sean Connery stuff, yeah.
But not like, oh, we're just gonna kill him off. Like that is like that because again, the example people give when they're talking about Sully is Indiana Jones, how we don't kill characters off there, and it's like it is such a hard left pivot because to Cameron's point, like he just said, what is more devastating than losing a child? So like that is like such an extreme escalation in terms of like, we don't kill anyone off here. This is Indiana Jones. And then we're like, we're going to kill his son off. And it's like, that just seems, and again, it's sort of, again, like something I said earlier for Just Some Die, where it's like, how it is performed, I think is beautiful and gorgeous. Like, and what that moment is great. It's not my favorite moment. That's the end with Marion and Indy, but it is a very, very great moment in the movie, and I really love it. Having said that, I don't need it, and I don't want it. It's not what Indiana Jones is, right? It's like that sort of thing. Like, I don't like that it's here. Having said that, it's done really well, but I still think it's so unnecessary, right? Like, it is such a brutal, I think, unneeded punch to Indy that is, to Cameron's point, is sort of unrecoverable from that. I just don't think this movie needs that extent.
You can't recover from the death of a child, but you can adapt and you can live on. And I think that to a point, though, I also want to make is, Logan, you don't like it when these happen to any of your favorite characters. When my favorite, Luke Skywalker is a great example where you're like, you like you can make that same example for how you feel about Luke Skywalker in Last Jedi. Like
I 100% would.
This is how you feel.
Right.
You have characters you love, and you don't like it when bad things have happened to them that irrevocably change who they are as people.
And I don't. So two things to that.
I'm sorry, that was a bit too broad. I apologize. That was a bit too broad.
But like, I don't think that's insane. First off,
I don't think it's insane. I think it's very real. I'm not saying you're wrong for it. I'm saying that's a very that's a very Logan reaction to something that, like, I love this character. I love where they ended. Why have they irrevocably changed that by making this tragic thing happen to this character when tragic thing happens to people all the time and happens in stories all the time?
But I think the difference is that, you know, whether it is with Luke, let's focus on Luke most prominently, right? Like, the issue that the significant issue I have with Last Jedi, right, which I've kind of grown to appreciate more over the years, the significant issue I have is that they fundamentally, I think, misunderstand who that character is in key moments and in key ways, and the arc he just went on in 4, 5, and 6, right? And they basically make Luke lose a lot of that progress, I think, and then do it over again in this one movie. And I think my issue is that a lot of these characters have a conclusion. Their story is resolved by the end of a thing, whether it's Luke or Indiana Jones or whoever, or Monk is getting a movie now, apparently. Like, all these characters have endings, right? Right? And they're all really good endings, whether it's Episode 6 or Last Crusade or the ending of Monk, right? They all have great endings, right? And then, or even Scrubs, right? JD, like, they have that,
and then money gets introduced, and they're like, "We can make more money off this. All right,
and
let's change our ending."
The issue is that then they redo that, and the problem becomes, I would argue, in all of these cases, they change who these characters are because they have to. But the issue is that the character is no longer the same person, and they're doing really devastating things to him. They're having Luke almost kill his nephew. And then that leads to the entire destruction of the New Jedi Order, the entire collapse of the Republic eventually sprawls out of this, and the entire devastation of entire planets and solar systems becomes from that. That's an insane amount of trauma to put on Luke Skywalker. What are you talking? He's not Joel Miller, right? To like this same point, like,
but it's not all on him. Like, it's not just all on him though.
But like, it's all that ripple effect, and like, this is what I'm saying. And the same thing with like Indy and having like this much trauma happen to him, right? Or like. Also, like, there's also an argument I think that's not insane for me to make either. I grew up with Luke Skywalker. I grew up with James Bond. I grew up with Indiana Jones. I didn't grow up with, but like, I was here for Joel, right? Or whoever else it might be. And like, what have they done to all of these characters in the last like 5-year window? They're just fucking blowing all their brains out except for Indy, right? And even Indy, they basically fake it. Yeah. Right, they give you that moment and then do it again. It's like, I don't need this, right? I don't need the Christopher Robin gets murdered in the streets Winnie the Pooh story. That's not what I want, right? Like, there are certain cases where I'm like, I don't need the dark and gritty version of this character's story because I don't think that's what this story necessarily is. Would be my only counter to what you're saying. I understand that it's real world consequences, trauma and tragedy happens. All of that is totally valid. What I'm just saying is that I don't need that in every one of my stories, right? Like, do we really need a James Bond story where he dies? I don't necessarily think we do. Do we need a Luke Skywalker story where he dies after almost killing his nephew? I don't know if we do, right? Like, and that's okay. Like, there are other characters' stories we can do that with. Not everything needs to be The Godfather or The Sopranos, right? Like, that's my counter. Is that, like, I think we're so intent on doing a darker, more realistic, whatever version of these stories that I think sometimes we lose what the stories are themselves and what these characters are themselves. I'm not saying that it's done badly in this case. I'm just saying it's not needed.
You just don't want to have happened at all.
In a series that already has a very different connotation and relationship with fridges, thanks to the last movie. Yeah, Mutt is absolutely fridged in the narrative sense in this one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it just works in a better way for Cameron and I than and you don't you didn't
and I
think he needed to be. But it is absolutely a narrative trope to fridge a character for some kind of emotional beat for our hero character.
Yeah, and I don't think that, and I to the point though I will say is like what you're saying and where you're coming from is very real for your interpretations of those stories. Sure. And not everybody has those interpretations of those stories. And I think that is what makes them great. I think that's what makes this film good is that James Mangold and everyone else kind of came together and said, hey, how can we tell a different indie story or a continuation of indie story? And they told it, and they put in something that you hate seeing for characters that you love. And here's the thing. We hate seeing that for the character we love, but we end up getting, if done well, we get really incredible moments out of it. And for some of us, it's worth 100%. It for others like yourself, I think it's not, and I think that's awesome.
It's definitely become a trope in the modern era with
that we're killing off our heroes from the past, right? Yeah, 100%.
I mean, with the like rebootification and the like, let's do the long delayed sequels and stuff. And, like, I think we've got to start that character from from like, we can't start them at the high they were at the end, because then where do they go from there is very much like
not even, and I would argue not even necessarily that element, just in terms of element of like. I think there is a like directorial storyteller element of like, we grew up with these characters. We are now older. We want to tell more mature themes. we're not kids anymore. We're adults who maybe have lost our parents. These figures are our parents' age now. We want to kind of reflect that and have these kind of consequences and like grapple with like morality or mortality and these kind of elements. And I think that's totally fair. And I think it's why a lot of these characters are kind of having these experiences where some of them are dying, right? I think that's totally valid. Again, my only argument is that
what does it have to happen to the ones you love? That.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I just don't think it's necessary, right? Like, and that's the thing. That's like, I just think, there are characters that work from their characters that don't. And to Cameron's point, like, I just think I can't point to an example where I think it's worked. And to the point I was going to make, the larger point I was going to make is that, again, having said everything I just said and the entire debate me and Cameron just got into, I would also just say the thing I always say for Star Wars, which I think is the best example of this. If you like it, awesome, watch it. And if you don't, great. Don't ever watch Rise of Skywalker again. It's terrible. It's fine. All of this can coexist. That's the whole point, right? I'm not saying that my view has to be the only view. I'm just simply stating my opinion, as Cameron is saying his and Trevor is saying his, right? But like, also, like, there are 2.5 good movies in this series, so who cares, right? It's okay to like things that aren't perfect. That's the whole point of stories.
I say with this one, we got 2 3/4 of a good movie now.
Yeah, it's like weird. Yeah.
Maybe actually, you know what? A 3. We have 3 whole good movies.
I was going to say the same thing.
Take a little bit of Kingdom and Crystal Skull that is not that is not entirely maligned, and you can throw a chunk of that into this one.
I think the first 2/3 of Crystal Skull work pretty well, actually.
Yeah, it's that last third.
Had to lose it.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, we all agreed the last third was like where they lost it.
Yeah.
And I would say take those first 2/3, fill in all the parts we like all had issues with in this movie, and you got a solid Indiana Jones movie. Everybody.
There you go.
Can I also say something too, which is that I don't hate the monkey swinging scene in Crystal Skull.
You don't?
It's not as bad as people think it is. It's like dumb. It's super dumb, but it's like, I kind of like it. It's like good, bad, dumb is what I will say.
It's okay.
It's at the risk of reopening the conversation from earlier. The fact that he speeds through the jungle at the same speed that the car chase does is as bad as Voller showing up.
It's so great
in Sicily.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Right where he needs to show up.
Absolutely. I will agree with that. I will agree. There's no opening that argument. I will agree. The Sicily showing up and the monkey swinging, same levels of egregious bullshit. 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Let's dive into the report card. We grade from A+ to F. I'll kick things off here because I seldom do. Give you guys time to kind of formulate your thoughts. I'm gonna give this a B. I think there is a lot of fun here. I think it's it is on the better side of indie movies for me. And I like on this second kind of or this rewatch. I had a good time with it. It is above average for me. Not stellar, but yeah, I had a good time with it. So it gets a B from me. Cameron, how about you?
This gets a B+ for me, actually.
Okay.
I was, by the time we ended the film, I thought to myself, this is a solid B+ experience. There's a lot of things that I think detract it from getting out of that A status, but I think it's certainly within the B range, and I feel like I'm a little bit higher than you guys are on it, so I'm a B+.
Cool. Logan, how about you?
Now you guys are making me question mine. I'm gonna say I am gonna bring it up a tiny bit. I'll say a C+. I think it is just short of like a B range, right? I think there are still things holding it back. Weirdly enough, for an indie movie, a lot of it's on like the more lighthearted and comedic side of things. I think it falls flatter on, but the dramatic stuff I think is excellent. I think we'd all agree. We didn't really touch on it, but I think the Marion and Indy scene at the end of the movie is simply phenomenal. I think it's absolutely beautiful.
It's pitch perfect.
And yeah, it's just heartbreakingly beautiful. And to Cameron's point about all the mutt stuff that we just got into discussion on, I think all of it ties in so well there. And there's so much unspoken in that moment that it's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. There are weird things. Like, to me, this movie, unlike Crystal Skull, where I think the first 2/3 really work pretty well and the last act just kind of drops ball, this one I think is much more kind of like uneven throughout the whole thing, and so it kind of makes it harder to judge in some ways. But I really enjoy it, and it is so much better than the worst Indiana Jones has to offer. And even if it doesn't hit the heights, we are grading on a mighty big curve with Indiana Jones in terms of like the highest heights it hits, right? With Last Crusade and Raiders of the Lost Ark, which are two of the best action-rich movies ever, probably. So yeah, I would give it a C+, but also acknowledge that it's in stiff competition.
There you go. Great. Now we've got our fun little indie segments. It belongs in a museum, which we got multiple times in this movie. So our best artifacts. Where are we going to put the Archimedes dial? For reference, we have at number 5 the Crystal Skull, number 4 the Sankara stones, number 3 the Cross of Coronado from the beginning of Last Crusade.
Hell yeah.
Number 2 the Ark of the Covenant, and number 1 the Holy Grail. Where do we want to throw the Archimedes dial into the mix?
I put it above the cross.
Cross Coronado? Okay,
Yeah.
so number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Logan, how about you?
That's a good question. I feel like I could put this in like 3 different spots. I'm going to put it... I'll put it below the cross, above the Sankara stones.
I think I'll agree with you on that, because I think we talked about it when we ranked the cross. The cross is a fun one because it's the one that actually makes it to a museum. It's the one he actually successfully. It takes him many years, but he does get it there. And it's also just it's just an artifact. It's just a cool thing. It doesn't have weird mystical powers.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we hadn't actually gone back in time with the Ark, I might have put it ahead of the cross. But I think, again, like I was saying, seeing the monster in the closet sort of makes it not as cool. Mm-hmm.
For sure.
That sort of takes it down a peg for me.
And I guess to clarify, technically the Archimedes dial doesn't have powers. It just helps you identify where the time fissure is going to be. So
the time fissure is a natural phenomenon.
Time fissures just naturally exist. There's probably a bunch of them over the Bermuda Triangle, and that's probably what's gone on there over the years.
That's the next spin.
We got a whole bunch of stuff. Right off camera, we didn't see there in 214 BC, but there's a whole that's Amelia Earhart's over there hanging out. Yeah, exactly.
My thing about it, and the reason why I rank it higher, is I like that it's in 2 pieces. I like that you bring them together along with the little thing that goes in the middle. I think the intricacies
that nobody knew about, that just suddenly Voeller's oh, this must be how this happens.
Yeah, that's
going to pull this pick off his. Going to pull this piece off this body that we've never seen before, that we didn't know existed.
Yep, totally fair. I think that's a totally fair criticism. That's one of my criticisms of the movie. Actually, is I'm that just is a random thing. That's a crucial piece. of the puzzle.
Cameron, it's literally in his hands, so he of course has to know how to use it.
No, because it's just for me. It's the fact that he goes, and this is the actual final piece. And I'm then why did we have the other piece that was already in? Why did we break the dial in half if the crucial piece was also in there? It makes sense why Archimedes was buried with both of those pieces, I guess. But for the weird focus they put on that moment, it's just super out of place.
Yeah.
After we just had that awesome moment of him sliding them together and you hear the clicking and everything happen. Yeah. For me, that's what I think above the cross. But if we want to talk about emotional attachment and like the story we get at the beginning of Last Crusade that shows us all the different tropes that Indiana picks up from the dude who beat him as a child, or actually that he beat as a child but still ended up walking away with the treasure.
Yeah.
That I would probably be ranking it higher. But if we're talking just the treasure itself, I think the clickety clackities of the Archimedes dial is what gets me. It tickles the ASMR buds in my ear that I'm just like, yes, give me more clickety clackies.
I forgot what the next thing is going to be, and it made me very happy.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and throw Archimedes dial in there at number 4, below the Cross of Coronado, Ark of the Covenant, and the Holy Grail. Up next, most punchable Nazis.
Ooh.
Parentheses at all, since obviously we have a couple that don't have Nazis. We have 4 names to add to our list in Colonel Weber, from the Nazi.
Yeah, Nazi train.
Thank you.
And the Nazi train's not a fascist like conga line. It is an actual train that was full of Nazis.
It was an actual Nazi train. Yeah. Dr. Voller,
that was
and then his 2 henchmen, Kleber and Hauk.
I just want to say.
Yep.
If you put a gun to my head right now, I've already forgotten, both from watching it and from the cast, which one of those is which out of Kleber and Hauk.
Hauk is the big guy.
I think Kleber's okay. So I would have been right, but I blind guess.
Kleber's the
Southern
the
mustache, who's reading German or learning German at the beginning because he knows the plan is going to be going back to the past.
Yep.
In a weird way. So as a reminder. Number 11 was Dovchenko. Number 10, Spalko. I believe both of those were from Crystal Skull. Number 9, Dieter. Number 8, Mac. Some of these I'm definitely not going to remember who they actually were. They're just henchmen. But 9, Dieter. 8, Mac. 7, Molaram. 6, Todt. 5, Vogel. 4, Walter Donovan. 3, Belloc. 2, Elsa. And 1, obviously, Adolf Hitler. The most punchable Nazi.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
And
a character in the series, so it counts.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start with Colonel Weber, our Nazi colonel from the past. Where do we want to throw Weber into this mix?
God. I would put him under. I would personally put him under Dieter. Dieter does have the iconic burning the dial into his hand. What?
That's Todt.
That's Todt? Okay.
Yeah.
Then above Dieter, I guess. I don't know who Dieter is.
Todt's the guy who's the creepy guy. Dieter's the tall one, right?
No,
I'm just gonna.
Yeah, please Google it.
Yeah, googling Dieter Indiana Jones. I think Dieter is like the, was one of the blonde ones from. Yeah, God, he doesn't even come up. Cool.
Here you go. Great. Indiana Jones wiki fandom. Great. Let's see.
It's like the one that comes up is like, or when I
it's like a cartoon image.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I got. I think he was just like blonde Nazi, number 2 in the first movie.
Okay.
There's literally nothing. I went to like images on Wikipedia.
Did we make up Dieter? Did we just like decide to name a random Nazi that's punch Dieter?
Let me look at our other docs to see when we added him in.
That'd be super.
Yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah, that's what I'm pulling up.
Pulling up that.
Gotta pull up my.
Who's the guy from Last Crusade? Who's that Nazi?
Maybe that's him. Come on.
Not Crispin Glover and not Elsa, but the other one who gets knocked out of the blimp.
Crispin Glover's not in that one. Oh, that might be Dieter.
Glover, yeah, Julian Glover.
That is Dieter, yeah.
But the guy who gets knocked out of the window, he's like, for tickets, please, and punches him.
That might be him. Why are you? Because I'm.
But that'd be window he put
I'm
in
the wrong Google
He's definitely
Drive.
better than the tall one from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Let's see.
You get to see how the sausage is made here.
Yeah. This also hurts the fact that we did the rest of these 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Dieter is from Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's from the first movie. Okay. So the first movie was Belloc, Todt, who is the guy who gets the thing burnt onto his hand, and then Dieter was just the uber German one.
He was the one that Indiana fights on the plane, right?
No, that's just like a random big dude. Dieter is like the other guy at the end of the movie who gets burned as well. I think is that
okay.
Dieter.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, he's the other one, the third guy from the burning scene.
Also, apparently his name is Dietrich.
Let's keep it as Dieter.
Yeah.
I like it as Dieter too.
Well, yeah. Well, now I'm like, okay, he's there as Dietrich, but like, is he credited in Raiders as Dieter? That's probably because that's where I would have pulled these things from. But
so then Vogel, I think, is the guy from Last Crusade.
He's Dietrich. That's just always been a typo. My bad. That's why we couldn't find him Googling Dieter. Indiana Jones.
So yeah, Vogel's got to be the guy from Last Crusade who gets knocked out the window, which would make sense because it was like, that's weird that we put him lower than some of these randos from Raiders. So, okay, cool.
Yes, Vogel is Ernst Vogel.
Vogel's great. I was like, Vogel's a lot of fun.
Colonel,
I was like, that's weird that we put him so
major antagonist in Last Crusade. He's the one who gets thrown out of the.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the original point.
Yes.
For the Colonel, I think the Colonel's really forgettable.
Yeah.
And even though we have him by the wrong name and forgot who he was completely, I still think that Dieter is more memorable to me than Colonel Weber. So I would put the Colonel below Dieter. Because he doesn't at least get like an iconic burn-in at the like Lost Ark moment like Dieter does.
Yeah.
No, but he does get that cool scene where that kind of like scene where he has the fake lance of Longinus, and he's like crawling through the tunnel to try to like stab Indiana.
Sure. Yeah.
I like that. I like that. I like that fight scene.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't have a horse in this race either way, so I can be convinced.
But then he also gets shot and killed by Toby Jones. So
that's true.
Yeah. Iconic moment because he accidentally shoots Indiana first.
Yeah, again.
Versus like
you and I have very different definitions of the word iconic, Cameron.
Yeah, versus the power of God that kills Dieter.
Yeah, right. I'm with Logan. I'm going to put him below Dietrich / Dieter.
I would never
but still above Spalko and Dovchenko.
Absolutely.
They're just like generic bad guys from.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, what if we just palette swapped the Nazis for communists,
but don't make them ants, and one's the other one.
Yeah.
So
and one gets her brain melted by aliens or extra dimensional beings. Anyway, all right. So then we will we'll go to Hauk, the big guy, who gets taken out by Teddy. Where do you want to throw him?
I might put him last.
I feel like he's honestly, I don't care enough to even make an argument.
Because here's my thing:
would I put him higher because he gets killed by Teddy? Yes, but at the same time, he gets killed by a child,
like tertiary character, not even like a main or secondary one. Right?
Yeah, he gets killed off, but also I like the way he's killed in the film, but that doesn't make him like a better punchable Nazi. Although he does absolutely massacre guys just by using his massive strength to just force them into death by pushing them into things.
Yeah.
I like
Here's
that.
my counter. Dovchenko gets eaten by giant ants,
That's
and it's
fair.
awesome.
That's what I was going to go
That's
with, too.
fair.
That is also my counter.
Yep, there you go.
It's fucking cool as shit. Yeah.
Hauk drowns. All his brute strength was for nothing.
Yeah.
If he was really so strong, he could have broken that grating out. We could have seen him in a post-credit scene, if he coming out and just ready to head back to New York.
His way through that and made it work. All right.
Well, you see him get out of you see him wash up, and he is walking out of the sea, and he has the handcuffs still tied to the grate, and he's just carrying it behind him.
He's just dragging the grate behind him.
Yeah,
I want to see him in a sequel where he falls in love with a woman half his size as a space station explodes. That's what I want. My big
there you go. Exactly. You got Moonraker.
That's what
I'm actually a big fan of Moonraker, so I love
Moonhauker. Oh God, Moonraker was so bad. You are an idiot.
So much for saying that.
That
tracks so much for you. Tracks so much for you.
They have laser guns, man.
Yeah,
exactly. What more do you need, right? As a kid, I'm sure.
Let's see. Because I looked it up recently when talking with Logan. In our rankings, Moonraker for me was number 23 out of 25.
For me, it's 24. It was it was my penultimate.
Only Golden Gun is worse than Moonraker for you. So yes, of course Cameron loves Moonraker.
Because I also love Golden Gun.
Oh God,
Man of the Golden Gun's bad. That movie.
Yeah, but he also has the car that turns into a plane.
Yeah, but they ruin it with the slide whistle noise.
It's fine. I'm cool with that. I love that, actually. I love the slide whistle noise on it.
No.
This is proof that I
in
love
this
dumb
regard,
things.
Cam just likes very different dumb things about the Bond series than you like, Logan.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's very fair.
I don't like a lot of the Roger Moore
you
shit.
both
Him and
like
Seth,
dumb
he likes a lot of
shit.
Roger Moore.
Yeah.
Oh, we all like dumb shit. We all
Yeah.
like dumb shit. Yeah.
Trevor's probably the person with the best track record of not liking dumb shit as much.
I like some dumb shit.
You like some dumb shit, but to the extent that Logan and I like dumb
Trevor just
shit.
puts
I'm
dumb
the
shit into,
one
like, Disney
that created
stuff.
a Disney Plus podcast.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
fair.
It's like,
So we could do episodes on dumb shit that I like.
That's fair.
So yeah.
shout out to Andy's $1 million cook-off.
That was a Frank special. But all right, Kleber. Where do we want to throw Kleber?
Again, I would put him below.
So here's what I like about Kleber is I like him as a stand-in for kind of like the political sympathizers with the Nazis in the South. And once again, when I go back to what I originally said at the very top of the episode, I love these little push pins that kind of hold this film up for me in different places. And otherwise, he's like a whatever villain and stupid and whatever. But because he represents something a little bit more in like my interpretation of the film, I do put him a little higher. So I will put him above Dieter.
Oh. I can't believe we put Spalko so low also. Looking at that night, I was like, were we really
we're talking
didn't like
about,
her, did we?
we didn't really like her, but also it's like how punchable are these people? / how memorable.
I viewed it just like how much we like.
I mean,
don't like this. How I view it.
I've named it that. And if
Yeah,
you're the
that's
one
like
that
a-
takes
that's like a
that
bit,
incredibly literally, Cameron, then
we've had this discussion.
we are ranking on different criteria.
We had this discussion, and although that's also why I agreed to Adolf Hitler being. I mean, Hitler is going to be number one.
I mean,
no matter what, 'cause he's Adolf Hitler.
In either criteria, he's number one, right? Yeah.
Bad guy criteria, absolutely number one.
I would say you put
Then
him, you'd have him
you know what,
below
actually-
Mac, above Dieter.
Yeah, I will also say make sure you add Henry Kissinger, even though he wasn't actually in the movie in this.
No, I'm not doing that, Cameron. Sorry.
It's in the right era and the right time. All right, Kissinger. He did
Not a
Laos.
character, though.
He did Cambodia. He did Agent
Not a
Orange.
character.
I don't
during
disagree that he is a very punchable dead person now, but
I mean, he was a
he
very
is not a
punchable
character
live
in
person
an
2
Indiana
days
Jones
ago.
film.
Trevor, what are your thoughts? I'm have to think about this one.
I mean, I think it's interesting because
Yeah.
I mean, both him and Hauk, like if you asked me a week from now, I would not be able to pull their names out of a hat or anything like
Right.
that. Admittedly, I'm not able to pull most of these names out of a hat though, because they're just generic henchman names.
But like that's my argument to that is that like I can at least remember like, oh, the big Russian gets eaten by ants. And I'm trying to think like, will this guy have like that same moment of like iconic scene at least of anything in this movie? And I'm trying to think like, does he have a moment that stands out like that?
I mean, for me, it comes back to what I mentioned earlier in that I don't like he is the icon for me of inconsistent writing and performance and stuff in terms of like he kills some people and then sometimes he's like, no, I'm not going to be trigger happy anymore.
We're going to take Teddy.
I like he ultimately, I would probably put him above Colonel Weber, I guess, because he's more of a character here than the past Fortress Nazi.
Sure.
And he does like I do like his little I love when people call him out for being trigger happy. He's like, I don't care, I don't work for you. I'm not in the CIA. I am just acting with impunity here and nobody's giving me shit for it.
I don't work for no government man.
Plus I do like that he's all in on going back and being a Nazi, and that's kind of a dick move. Like I would love to punch a guy with that. And also, I'd love to punch his stupid mustache face.
I could be okay with that. I think.
So I don't think he reaches the highs of like some of the earlier ones.
I will say I've seen that man with a regular mustache, and he does not normally look that punchable with it.
I believe it.
This is a very punchable mustache that he's got on.
Yeah,
intentional, I would say.
Crap! I was gonna say, like I've already forgotten his name because I had deleted it out of the doc and was like,
Clater, right?
"What am I supposed to put in here?" Yeah, I basically had to Control Z before before I had deleted his name.
Watching, I was like, "What's he doing here?" Yeah.
Yep. That was my bad. All right, then we get to the real big bad of this one, Dr. Voller, the great Mads Mikkelsen. I would start the bidding because I really like him. And again, like I fully recognize and agree with the like, oh, it'd be cool if he had more of an antagonistic stuff with Indy. But also he's weirdly invincible to getting knocked off a train at a very high speed and just has no.
Don't ever explain that, dude. I just kind of thought about that again. Yeah, they just kind of
Trevor let out.
He should absolutely have been dead.
Yeah, Trevor let out such a guffaw when that happened.
Yeah. And so the fact that like he comes back all those years later with no cosmetic damage or anything like that is just like, that's absurd. That they just were like, no, we don't give a fuck about physics. This guy is a physicist, so that's his superpower, I guess.
Yeah.
So I would put him probably at number 5 below Donovan. And like honestly, like there's a part of me that likes him even better than Donovan and Belloc in terms of like, I love his plan.
Yeah.
Being, I'm going to go back in time and do Nazism better than Hitler did. Yeah. Like, that is a very punchable face and plant kind of thing. So I like that, but I think the relationship that Indy has with Belloc and Donovan gives them the edge for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would put him above Vogel.
I don't hate it.
I'm good with it.
All right.
I don't hate it, yeah.
All right.
Donovan in particular is like so like deliciously like gleefully bad. Like he's that actor like Julian Glover's having like a ton of fun with that. Which makes up for like how bland and boring his Bond villain is. It's great.
Yep.
All right. Only.
We still got 2 more things to rank here. We got best sidekicks. Where we've got back at number 99, Willie Scott. Number 98, Elsa. And then we jump up to the actual list. 7, Oxley. 6, Sala. 5, Marcus Brody. 4, Marion. 3, Mutt. 2, Short Round. And number 1, with a bullet, Professor Henry Jones Sr. So we've got Helena and Teddy to throw into the mix on this one. Let's go with Teddy first. Where do we want to throw Teddy into the mix? And I guess technically also we can slide up or down Sala and Marion if we wanted to. But Teddy, where do we want to put Teddy into the mix?
I would say 8.
Below Oxley?
Yeah. And I like Teddy, which is just to be clear.
Yeah, it's a
looking at this list.
Once you get to that high.
That's what I was just going to say. I mean, I don't think there's a single bad person in that entire list. Yeah, like, I think 1 through 7, that's a solid list.
It's that like Oxley spends 99% of the movie looped out of his brain, but he's still John Hurt.
And he's so good when he does like
his like one moment of like clarity is like he's
so good.
That's John Hurt's really good at this. Whereas Teddy it just doesn't really do anything.
That really is a murderer's row though to Cameron 20. That is like that whole list top. Like, that's not a bad. Like the fact that like Salah is 6 is like crazy to me. It's like holy shit, we had him that low, and it's like everyone else is really good.
I'll make before we dive into Helena, I'll make the argument that I think with this movie and Salah coming back, and like he obviously doesn't go on the adventure, but he's eager to. He wants that one last adventure. He cheers Indy on. He helps Indy out. I would make the move to bump Salah up above Marcus Brody. And basically slide him up one spot. So he would be below Marion and above Marcus.
We're gonna do Marion too.
Yeah, I would definitely put him above Marcus at this point, just because there is a legacy moment where when Indy goes to his apartment, and
we can't hold that against Marcus Brody.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I mean, it's the reality of it is like when he talks about, he goes, like he introduces Indy to his grandkids. And he goes, "This is the great man who brought our family to America," which sets up like Indy helped out
people
Salah.
Would obviously know who Indiana Jones is. Not the point.
Yeah, but if you also know the history of like what happened during this period of time from where Salah was to where like Salah would not have been in good graces with the like current government of Egypt. And like if you really go into the politics of like the era, like the kind of upheaval that Egypt had during that period of time, you have like you get like a very nice nod to Indiana taking care of the people or like taking care of Salah basically after Salah took care of him for so many times.
That Brody in Last Crusade I like more than any specific Salah movie because he's hilarious in the movie. He's great.
Purely he's so great. He's a million miles away from you, and then the hard cut to excuse me, can anybody help me?
He knows 12 different languages, has connections all over the world. Like you'll never be able to catch up with them.
It walks right into the door that they got. Yeah, it's all great.
It's so good.
And like Brody throughout that movie, and a movie that is really funny is one of the funniest parts. But I like Cameron's legacy argument, I think. So I'm okay with it. I'd be fine moving him to 5 and Brody to 6. Again, this is a murderer's row list. These are all. Yep. It's like
we're talking within.
Usually these lists are half at least shit. This is like all great.
Yep.
Yeah, this is. I would say now from. We have 8 in there now. No, it's still like the top 7, right? Or
it's 8 with Teddy.
We have Teddy.
8 with Teddy. Yeah. So I think this top 7 through 2, I think inches away from each other.
All right, so I'm going to throw Teddy down to like number 12 then. We're not going to have 12 or anything like that, but I'm just going to put him at 12 in the same way that we've got like the big old gap down to Elsa.
99.
He's certainly not down to Elsa point. For sure,
no.
But.
He's just here. There's room for other potential sidekicks to come.
Here's my question to you.
Yeah.
How do we want to do this? Do we want to do Helena first and then Marion?
I would say just given prominence in the film, I would say let's go ahead and talk on Marion first. And then we'll do kind of Helena as the last one. I think.
Do we want to talk about her dad though?
No, that would have been 4 movies ago.
Oh no, you're saying Toby Jones.
Toby Jones.
No,
it's really the one scene.
It's all in the flashbacks.
Yeah,
that's fair. I brought it up not as like, hey, I think we should. I was bringing it up as like,
it's a good call, and theoretically we could, but he's such a negligible factor in the film. I think, apart from like, he's a presence through Helena, but
Toby Jones fans, sorry, but yeah,
that would be like. Oh, let's like rank the tubby kid from the Scouts at the beginning of Raider.
That's fair. Yeah. That's totally fair. I think that's your very
Last Crusade.
Last Crusade. I think he's done more than that, but I see your point, and I can see. I actually wasn't trying to make a point for him. I just brought up. I was like, absolutely. Hey, we should bring it up at least.
No, it was a good call. But yeah, I think leave him out.
If we're doing Marion first, I think Marion goes second.
Want to bump her up above Mutt in Short Round?
I think she's only behind Indy's dad. Yeah.
You good with that, Cameron?
For the same legacy arguments.
I'm okay with that. I imagine, Cameron, you like Short Round a lot. So
yeah, but here's the thing: I can't move Short Round up at this point. He's locked in wherever he's going to be locked in. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would rank Marion over Mutt at this point after this film when because like she shows up for one scene, but it's like goddamn one of the two most impactful scenes of the entire movie. So. And she carries that scene.
Yeah.
Like, goddamn, she's so great.
There's also just something, I think, like, just sort of like Salah, like the fact that she's there at the very beginning and at the very close of it all. Literally, like, the last scene of the movie basically is just like her and Indy. I just think, like the fact that for basically 40 years, there's been like this love between the two of them. I think it's just, it's she's got to be up there. Yep. People love Marion.
I mean, let's see. You gotta he's 80 here, and it's 50 years back when she was just 15 years old, and he was like 30.
Ooh.
That's not canonical. That was just like in a
Ooh, right. That we get away without ever mentioning that again. Oh no.
Not canonical.
Oh no,
that's fine.
Anyway, lastly, we've got Helena. Where do we want to throw Helena into the mix?
Let me pull it up again.
I imagine, is she also kind of down below Oxley, or?
I would.
I imagine that's probably where Logan would put her. I don't know where you want to throw her.
I will say this. I think.
I
would rank her above Oxley. I would rank her above.
I would put her 7th. I'd put her in between Brody and Oxley.
Okay, yeah. I'm good with that.
Now, if Oxley had more than one scene,
if Oxley wasn't just Loopy Town the whole movie,
right, that's the key. Yeah,
absolutely fair. All right, then our final sidekick rankings here. 99, Willie Scott, the worst. 98, the actual Nazi Elsa. Number 12, Teddy. Then we jump up to number 8, Oxley. Number 7, Helena. Number 6, Marcus Brody. Number 5, Salah. Number 4, Mutt. Number 3, Short Round. Number 2, Marion. And number 1, Professor Henry Jones Sr.
Hell yes.
And finally, our Indiana Jones rankings. Number 4 is Temple of Doom. Number 3, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Number 2, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Number 1, The Last Crusade. Dial of Destiny. I'm guessing we're all probably in the same camp of this is a solid middle at number 3, or would you want to make the case for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull over this one, Logan?
I'd make the case for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull over this. I think that was one of the. I mean, again, I should make clear that I am admittedly Stockholm syndromed into Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I've seen this movie like a dozen times at this point now. I saw it like 6 times in theaters. I've seen it a lot since then. It's like always on TV. So, I will acknowledge that I just know this movie like the back of my hand. But I always find new things I think to enjoy, and I like Shia LaBeouf in it. I like the Marion stuff in it. I like Indy in it. I think its problems are pretty significantly just like the alien stuff.
For me, it's like all of the other things are the problems of that movie.
And like the Russian stuff is kind of silly, but like I think Kingdom of the Crystal Skull feels more like an indie movie in a lot of ways than this one does, because this one is a lot sadder and a lot more melancholic and a lot more reflective. And I think that leads to like really interesting stuff, but I also think it leads to it not necessarily feeling like a natural extension of the Indiana Jones series. So yeah, I think Crystal Skull it does not try to be as serious as this one, and it is silly fun, and so I like it. I think they're pretty close. I think I could probably be persuaded any day, right, to kind of go back and forth on them, but I would say, yeah, I would prefer Crystal Skull over this. I would certainly, and the argument I use a lot for like the Bond movies, and I'm trying to do like tiebreakers, is that like I'd rather watch Crystal Skull again than I'd rather watch this again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think.
And that, given your affinity for the character, does not surprise me. Whereas I'm okay with Indy having a little bit more of a downer experience in this one, because I think, but to what you said, Cameron, earlier, I think this one is a lot more like uneven compared to like Crystal Skull. But
it drops off the last half.
Yeah, I think Crystal Skull just drops off so hard for me in a few places.
No, all of us.
Yeah. So Cam, where you fall? Are you?
Oh, I'm with you on that one, Trevor. Like absolutely, yeah. Like I said, between this movie and its unevenness and the first 2/3 of Crystal Skull, we have a solid Indiana Jones film. But I think that for me, and to that point, I would rather watch this than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Yeah. But like through that same measurement. So for sure, that's really where I'm at with it. Also, like, yeah, there's a lot of just aspects about this film that I just really love, and think are really good. So that's where I'm at.
We use that like, oh, let's piecemeal it out. For me, like if you piecemeal it out like that, I think there's 3.5 good indie movies.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that either.
Probably true.
Is where it falls out. I think Temple of Doom just bad. Oh, there's like that is one bad movie, and then there's about a quarter to a third bad, or a half bad basically between the last two there.
I think it's like there are definitely clear tiers here, right? Where there are two, I think, exceptional movies, and then I think there are two really flawed but also really kind of interesting movies in Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny. And then I think there's just one movie that is really bad, and it's one of the only times where I'm just sort of like, any argument to the contrary, I just find to just be like, you just haven't watched the movie. You're just not watching the same time. I don't even know what you're talking about.
I think people who defend Temple of Doom are rooted in such nostalgia that
they're like
there are a couple
that's
good
the thing.
Shining moments, a la Ki Hui Kwan as Short Round. And the dynamic that he and Indy have.
I think the opening is cool.
Like, it is
I like
just
the opening.
It is it is a darker movie than this. And and Indy didn't lose a kid in that one.
It's also it should be noted, a unequivocally and unrepentantly racist movie.
Absolutely.
Just throughout the entire runtime. It is just so unabashed about that.
Oddly enough, Indiana Jones is not racist at all.
Yeah, and that's what's like so weird about it.
That's one of the nice
Willie Scott is doing all of the legwork on the racism.
And the direction of like focusing on stuff is racist as well. But it's like Indiana Jones defends the local culture. Is like eating the food, knows the languages, the history of the peoples, and he's extremely great. He and Kike Kwan are just like a shining light in this very awful movie.
But Ridley Scott,
but that's
absolutely.
it. And everything else is racist as hell. Yeah,
the movie itself makes decisions, and they're just baffling. Like in how, because 1984 is not that long ago. It's not like this movie was made in like 1930 something. It was the mid 80s, and it's so unbelievably racist.
It's like, hey, what do we love about those old pulp novels? It's like, remember all the ones that were super racist? Let's use those.
Let's triple down on that.
All right. So yes, our ultimate rankings here. Number 5, the very racist and low tier Temple of Doom. Then at number 4 and number 3, we have the kind of the mid tier Kingdom of the Crystal Skull at number 4, Dial of Destiny at number 3, and then the stellar ones at number 2, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and number 1, The Last Crusade.
Masterpiece.
Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. The options that Disney Plus is going to give you, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, shockingly. Then it's also going to recommend Jungle Cruise, and for some reason, still always Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. I will never understand why their algorithm shoots out the second one, but it does.
Literally a film that we despise. All three of us despise.
I want to watch Jungle Cruise.
Jungle Cruise.
I feel like I would enjoy it.
I missed the
opportunity. I feel like
I missed the opportunity to do the D Plus show for it and just didn't end up seeing it. So
we'll just do another one. It's fine. We did like 3 on Dead Man's Chest.
It feels that
way. There's also Timeless Heroes, Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford, this was the first time I saw this. It's basically a 90-minute seemingly documentary about Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford out there on Disney Plus. It's dated 2023, really so I imagine it came out sometime this year. Well, obviously it came out sometime this year. I don't know. I don't know if it was in the lead up to Dial of Destiny or what, but
if it was probably lead up either to it in theaters or before it landed on Disney Plus.
Yeah. So it was my first time seeing it in the recommendations. It was not in the recommendations when we were doing all of the previous Indiana Jones movies. So maybe it came after that. And then the last one that they're going to recommend is The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones, which means that National Treasure, which had been on there before, those ones got knocked out the list. But I'll still give them the shout out because they were in the previous episodes of
National Treasure is great. I'll stand by that till the day I die.
Extracurriculars. Anybody watching anything else on Disney Plus? I've had a busy week of watching things on Disney Plus, so I'll talk for in part because we're recording this about a week and a half after we recorded our last one, since we recorded the Thanksgiving episode early. Over the Thanksgiving weekend and then just in the week since, I watched the rest of the Behind the Attraction second season. Basically 6 episodes on various Disney attraction-y things.
I'm watching Indiana Jones one right now,
including the Indiana Jones ride, which was a fun one.
I remember that.
I watched Good Chemistry, which was the making of Elemental little documentary, about 45 minutes. It was a cool story about the director Peter Sohn, kind of, and like his story and how much his story influenced, and also just like cool getting to learn more about him as an animator who grew up kind of in a second generation house, kind of in New York. And all that stuff. The new Doctor Who specials are making their way out to Disney Plus. I watched the first one of those, which is basically the return of David Tennant into the role. So that was a fun thing. And then earlier this week, just as a good feel-good thing, I watched one of my very favorites, A Muppet Christmas Carol. Threw that on. Just had a great 90 minutes of Michael Caine.
Also a good shout out.
I did that while I was building some Lego or something like that. Had a great time. Anybody watching anything else? Or I imagine I'm doing the bulk of that one. Huh?
I said I was studying.
Yeah, there you go. That makes sense. Cam, anything from you?
I'm watching anime.
You're watching anime. That's absolutely fair. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna watch outside of that, I also watched like Blue Beetle. So there's that.
How's Blue Beetle?
It was fine. We talked about it on one of the podcasts. It is a very paint by the numbers superhero origin movie, but the fun of it is much like I also watched Shazam! Fury of the Gods. That was the other one I watched just like yesterday or something like that. The fun of Blue Beetle is much like the fun of like the first Shazam movie in that like, yeah, a lot of the tropes you're going over are the same, but like the family characters and the dynamic add a little bit of charm and a little bit of love to it. That kind of elevates it above, well, I've seen this a dozen times before. So that was a little fun. But other than that, it's very like milquetoast kind of superhero movie. But yeah, it was. I mean, it's out there on HBO Max. So, yeah. Cool. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, everybody, for joining me on this Indiana Jones adventure that started back in June and ran here through the end of the year with Dial of Destiny. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie, Loggy. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Logan?
Yo, shout out to Trevor doing like 55 episodes on Baldur's Gate 3.
I was going to whisper, I'm like, he's still doing Baldur's Gate. You can go with Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I knew. It never ends.
Yep.
That's some wild shit.
Almost. Theoretically, I should be finishing it like when I record more episodes on like Monday or Tuesday, while I'm off work this coming week. So but that's still going to be like another
dude's a madman.
3 or 4 weeks of episodes still to go.
Again, so. I give shout outs to Cam and Trev for that all the time. All the stuff they've done. Those are all crazy long
cool.
Shows. So watch all of them.
There you go.
Lots of good stuff over there.
Yeah, I gotta figure out. I'm gonna like run the numbers on like how many multi-part series I did this year, because I started the year still doing Skyrim, which I think I started end of last year.
Did you finish that ever, or just go?
He finished
ultimately, I finished Skyrim. Like there was, I thought about going and doing like the DLC because I've never played the where you can go be a vampire and stuff like that. I've never done that, and like the Dragon Heart or something. I don't remember. I have the DLC. I've just never done the DLC like expansions for Skyrim, and then I just never went back to it. But yeah, I finished that one up. I did Breath of the Wild. Went straight into Tears of the Kingdom after that, and then I'm trying to think, did I do another long form one between Tears of the Kingdom, or did I go straight into Baldur's Gate? I think probably straight into Baldur's Gate.
You went straight into Baldur's Gate because
you were doing, you did Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So, yep. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a massive shout out to our latest episode of That Nerdy Site Show. I got to talk about Yakuza Like a Dragon, and we also had a little mini spoiler cast on Wish and Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. We had a really great time kind of reminiscing our love of Disney and Scott Pilgrim. It was a great time, so go check those out.
Yep. Absolutely. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. And in addition to shouting out those things, just because we talked about it a few times on this one, I'll shout out, go check out our other thoughts on Indiana Jones from earlier in the year. We did all the other indie movies there. But also go check out on the YouTube channel, me and Logan doing a whole bunch of Bond episodes. Go check out that Bond show from last year.
Cameron's on one of them.
Yeah, Cameron's
Live and Let Die, I believe.
Yeah, it is. One of my favorites.
Yep.
It's so good. Live and Let Die is so good. Don't listen to Trevor. It's great.
Go listen to the Moonraker episode where we just tear it apart.
Oh, dude. It's
think of how much Cameron likes it.
It's funny that you mentioned this too, because since I went back and watched all of them last year, I've watched all but like 5 again, just like in this year, right? Like
because you do, as you, Logan Wilkinson,
I didn't used to, but then I got like really into Bond again, doing that and just everything around it. Not that I was ever super out of it, but I got like even more into it again. It's like I've gone back and watched all of them again. Like one of the ones I hadn't watched is Moonraker, and I was like, you know what? Maybe it's just the end of Moonraker that I like viscerally in my gut hate when they're in
one
space.
of my
like,
favorite parts of that entire movie is the ending of Moonraker.
It's terrible. But it's like maybe just the end. And I've always, even as a child, I was like, I hate this. This is not James Bond.
That's the one that starts with Jaws surviving falling out of a plane, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Without a parachute. Yep. Into a net. Yep. That's correct. And I was like, maybe it's just the end that I hate. And like the other part, it's like, well, but you like, not great, but like fine, mediocre Bond. And I watched it again, but just like, it's so boring up until the end when it's like, oh, now you're just bad, that it's like you're just never really a good time. And I watched it again and I'm just like, yeah, it's just not the vibe. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm glad people love it. People it is a very small community in the Bond community, but the people who love Moonraker, they love Moonraker. They are all in.
I love Moonraker for all the reasons that it's bad. Do I know it's bad?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
It's so bad.
I totally respect that.
I love
Totally
how bad it
that.
is as a movie, to the point where, because it's like,
that's
like,
the Diamonds Are Forever for me.
Is that what it is?
Hell
okay.
yeah.
That's fair.
Hell yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I was like, Logan, because it was early enough in our run, but Logan was out here visiting for his birthday that time. And so we watched Diamonds Are Forever together. And like, Logan was like, this is a bad one. Like, he had set me up for this is a very bad thing. But because we were watching together, it was, as we always talk about, it was the Rocky Horror Picture vibe of like, we were just making fun of it and like poking fun at all of the stupid things. And the thing that we like, that the most prevalent thing that has come out of that is us talking about the characters in that movie who know exactly what kind of campy movie they are in.
We use it all the time. I'm so happy that like, that's the thing, like, and that's the beauty of James Bond, isn't it? But like, this is a Bond for everyone. But like, Diamonds Are Forever is so, I cannot help but think of you whenever I think of that movie now, Trevor, and that's really beautiful to me. I love Trevor, and I love Diamonds Are Forever, and it's great. Like, just Charles Gray just being the most flamboyant in the movie, except for the fact that he's not, because Mr. Wit and Mr. Kid exist, and they're taking it up to 11 on everything, and also somehow being like a really well-handled gay couple in 1971. It's like, it's just all great. It's all good.
Yeah.
All of it's good.
Yeah. Go check out any and all of those things.
Yeah.
You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. We're coming up on like Game of the Year, End of the Year stuff, so we'll have that coming up in the movie films of the year too. I've been keeping my list going. I need to sit down and go through and like update rankings and stuff.
I'm gonna go hard during Christmas break. I'm gonna watch a lot of stuff that I have back.
I'm probably also going to have a like actual plays of the year, like ranking my favorite like TTRPG stuff that I've watched this year. I'll probably do another like Lego sets of the year thing. So it'll probably be like just buck wild with a whole bunch of the year lists here either in late December or early January. So stay tuned for all of that fun stuff. And yes, once again, if you liked what you heard, please remember to like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, ring notification bells, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other. Class dismissed. And do 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 do.